Good evening and welcome to the regularly scheduled July 21st, 2026 Nacogdoches City Council meeting. Chad, would you lead us in prayer, please?
Join me in prayer, please. Father God, we come to you, Lord, and we thank you for all the many blessings you bestow upon us each day, Lord. I thank you for the opportunity to serve, Lord. I thank you for our council, our staff, the residents of this great community, and most of all, I thank you for your Son, Jesus Christ, who died for our sins, Lord. I ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. If you'll stand for the pledges.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. On honor of the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Next item is open forum, and there being none tonight, we'll move to item 4, items to be removed from the consent agenda.
Make a motion, we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Have a motion and second. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Now to the regular agenda. Item 6A, consider approval of agreement bond between the City of Nacogdoches and Charles Poole Jr. for reimbursement of a potable water line installation to serve 2 parcels of land approximately 2.08 acres plus or minus in size, more particularly described by Nacogdoches Central Appraisal District parcels 81424 and 217034, and generally located near the intersection of North Street and Ernest McLean Road, in a not to exceed amount of $79,250.
Mayor, City Council, Case Opperman, Director of Public Works and City Engineer. Bringing before you this evening for consideration a developer agreement for a 6-inch water line extension along North Street on the west side from Ernest McLean Road to serve 2 commercial properties. The total linear footage is about 400 feet and not to exceed $79,250. Just as a reminder, in our Code of Ordinances, Chapter 106, we have the developer reimbursement ordinance, which allows reimbursement of up to 500 feet of water, sewer, or a combination thereof for commercial developments. We also have the same thing for residential, but it's 100 feet. These improvements have to be designed and bid and constructed to our standards. It's essentially as if the city were to carry this project forward and do it ourselves, but the developers are bearing the burden for the design and construction and implementation, and then we just accept it at the end if it is found to be done to our standards. And so we do budget $250,000 a year in both the water and the sewer budgets for these developer agreements, and there is budget available for this. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions?
Is that where the old motel used to be?
Was it?
That was torn down?
Well,
He's just a baby.
I don't
He
know where.
what-
I
I've
remember
only
him.
been here.
I was.
He don't know what was out there.
I remember them. I was thinking they were
Randy's
housing
been here
units, but
300 years.
No, they were. It was a restaurant and a hotel.
was it? Okay.
A long time ago.
So I
A
was
long time ago.
Long time ago. A few decades.
Mm-hmm.
But
It was a yes or no question.
yes.
Okay, thank you. Was there a sewer line and a water line out to it?
There's sewer present at the site, but the water line runs along Ernest McLean. The property itself has been subdivided, and so there's 2. And so water does not currently run along the frontage of North Street to serve them both. But there's a private water line that crosses the property on the west side, but nothing serves those 2 properties particularly right now. And the developer is here to answer any questions you might have for them if you'd like.
I think Randy answered them all.
Okay.
Any
Maybe
other-
he can clarify the hotel.
Any other questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion that we approve the agreement in item 6A.
I'll second. I have a motion second. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Item 6B, consider approval of a contract bond between the City of Nacogdoches and Tetra Tech for professional engineering design services for the water and wastewater SCADA system improvements in the amount of $586,828.
Mayor, City Council, Jason Vicker, your Assistant Public Works Director and Assistant City Engineer. If you'll remember, we had brought forth a couple meetings back with y'all's approval to go and begin a negotiation with a contract with our selected designer for the SCADA system, which was Tetra Tech. And so this evening we're bringing to y'all for hopefully approval the contract. This is, it's to provide a complete design package that we can bid out for improvements to our entire water and wastewater SCADA system, which is, to say the least, outdated. So it's hopefully eliminating end-of-life type equipment, new interfaces, power redundancy, just optimize the overall network. It's a multi-year project, so this will design now, probably even into 27, and then maybe go into construction late 27, early 28. But it's a much-needed system just for consistency, for new cybersecurity rules, everything that goes along with our plants. And so with that, just a quick, just the services we'll be providing, initial inventory, assessment of sites, 50% design, 90%, and of course the final bid package. Bidding services, which we ask most of our consultants to do, is on a time and materials basis, because at this point in time we have no idea what that really will take. Usually that's preparing the bid package, putting out to bid, reviewing bids at that point in time. That's down the road, but that's T&M, which we normally do with all our engineering consultants. So with that, I will answer any questions.
Any questions?
I just have one little one. Are these materials just going up and down in price? Are they fluctuating a lot, or are they pretty stable right now?
I mean, it's difficult to answer. I would say that it's just like any other equipment that you are purchasing. At this point in time, I suspect that the materials are going to be more later than they are now. But I mean, it is electrical equipment, it's computers. I don't think it's as stable. Anything is stable, so we'll just have to wait and see.
Okay.
The only thing I'll add is you're probably, with the stuff globally occurring, you're probably eventually going to have some COVID-like supply chain issues. I hate to use the word inevitable, but it's math. It's supply and demand.
Well, I'm glad to get these things fixed right away. So
We'll start design as soon as possible.
if you're ready from,
Any other? Yes, please.
okay, I'll make the motion that we approve the contract as outlined in item 6B.
Second.
Have a motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Item 6C, consider approval of a contract by and between the City of Nacogdoches and SCS Engineers for professional services associated with landfill liner construction, quality assurance for the liner construction for Block O, Cells 3 and 4 at the Nacogdoches landfill in the amount of $360,818. Mr. Vickery.
Mayor, City Council, same name, same title, Jason Vickery, Associate Director of Public Works and Associate City Engineer. Moving forward to you for consideration a contract between SCS Engineers and the city for quality construction assurance as we begin construction of the landfill that was approved at the last meeting. The last meeting we approved us to go and start a negotiation with SCS Engineers. We were successful in doing that in a short amount of time. And so with these construction quality assurance services, basically it's overall project management with a certifying engineer. To install the complete liner system, you have to have daily inspections. So they're out there on the city's behalf. It's a third party, essentially, making sure that the contractor that was awarded the construction and their sub is doing per the design plans. There's lab testing has to go involved. There's TCQ reporting that has to be done. And then they also handle construction phase engineering services as well. SCS has been working for the city for a very long time. They're since probably 2008, 2009. They've been our landfill engineer. They know the landfill ins and outs. They're a trusted firm. They do this nationwide. And so with that, we ask that you give consideration for a contract with SCS. This is a breakdown of their proposal. All of these expenses for this is all time materials. We really don't know. I mean, there's a construction timeline, construction schedule, but I mean, it may go long, may go short. So all the construction phase services and quality assurances are all time materials on a already approved rate schedule with SCS. So with that, I will answer any questions.
Any questions? Or I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve contract by and between the City of Nacogdoches and SCS Engineers.
Have a motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion
Thank
carries
you.
unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Vickery. Item 6D, consider approval of a franchise agreement with Live Oak Environmental LLC doing business as Eco Waste Solutions for the disposal of solid waste collected in Nacogdoches County at the Nacogdoches landfill.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Mike New, Executive Director of Development and Infrastructure. This agreement is for basically a franchise with Eco Waste Solutions. They are a company that has taken over for Piney Woods Sanitation. They operate strictly within, well, not strictly, but primarily within Nacogdoches County, not within the city. This is a new type of agreement that we're bringing forward to the council for the city. Over the last few months, as we've engaged all kinds of third parties that provide services in and around our community, solid waste collection, solid waste disposal, our landfill, it's a very competitive environment, and trash is money. There are a lot of companies that are looking to do business within our area as they see projected growth, as they see opportunities. And we've had two companies primarily, one being Piney Woods Sanitation, another one being Lilly Sanitation. They've kind of served a lot of the areas, residential areas around us within Nacogdoches County. They've historically provided, or they've historically disposed of waste at our landfill in different capacities, but we've had a relationship with them, just nothing formal, nothing on paper. Well, now that these companies have turned over, there's new ownership, we want to establish a little bit better, stronger parameters, better documentation about what we collect, what we allow into our landfill that's outside of our city limits. We've traditionally allowed disposal within Nacogdoches County, but tried to limit anything outside of our county from coming into our landfill. We want to maintain that. We want to be strict about how we manage any types of waste that comes into our landfill. We have to follow a lot of regulations from TCEQ. We have to manage our capacity in certain ways so that we know what's coming in the near future. In fact, our largest expense, or one of our biggest projects this year, and council has seen over the last few months, is our permit expansion, getting that Block O, those two cells 3 and 4, going so that we can add some life and capacity to our landfill. This agreement and others like it help us manage that capacity and help us build those relationships and know what's coming in and out of our landfill at times. So this agreement, although it's new, we expect there to be others seeking agreements like this. Particularly, there's another company that had purchased Lilly Sanitation. We're still working on that agreement. There's other agreements involving roll-off and temporary waste collection within the city, and there's other companies that provide those services for construction. So leaning into the future, this is one of the first, but certainly not the last agreement of this type that you'll see. Cities typically use these types of agreements to establish that relationship and manage that capacity in ways that it can and has authority to do. The city is still the exclusive provider of municipal waste, residential garbage collection in the city. But as far as what we take in with our city-owned landfill outside of our city limits jurisdiction is really up to us. And we can turn away any hauler that we think is not serving our interests as a city. So keeping that in mind, Eco Waste Solutions taking over for Piney Woods Sanitation, they are seeking to engage us with this franchise agreement. Again, the history of Piney Woods kind of started this process and the conversations with these other entities And this is one of those ways we're looking to better manage that. Specifically in this agreement, what we're looking at is a sort of a capacity for this company in 1,800 tons, and also established as part of that is a franchise fee that they would pay annually of the gross revenues that are collected within the area. So it's not just paying outside city rates like they have been historically. They would also be charged a franchise fee under this agreement. That simply allows us to continue to monitor, continue to maintain that relationship and know what's coming into our landfill. Of course, we do gate checks, we do inspections of hauls, but having these agreements in place allows us to better establish that relationship with these outside entities. We also have a representative from Eco Waste here, Sonny Hubbard, and happy to speak to you about his company and what they do and what they're looking to do in the Nacogdoches area. So with that, I'll take any questions from council.
I have one.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Where will those outside companies go with the material that we don't take?
Other landfills. There's landfills in other counties. There's some in Garrison and Cushing and Palestine and Jacksonville. So
Is it gonna make the cost rise for people that live out in the county to get rid of their trash?
it could, but again, the competition, there's multiple service providers within the county at this point, whereas the city sort of has exclusivity for residential garbage collection. There is competition in the county, so that tends to help create some competitive rates for services that are provided out there.
What if everybody does this and then they have nowhere to go with their paint cans or whatever it is we're disposing?
Well, we don't take hazardous waste. We'll maintain that standard, but in terms of where the garbage goes, is that what you're asking?
Well, I mean, if everybody does the same bill or whatever, the same motion, like all the cities around here, they suddenly don't have anywhere to go.
Well, then a lot of times new landfills are created. There's a huge regulatory process for doing that. We're going through a big regulatory hurdle now and expanding our landfill. What we don't want to do is fill it up too fast. We want to manage it for our city's growth. We want to manage it strategically, just like we do with roads and water and wastewater infrastructure. This is one way to do it, where we have authority within our jurisdiction. We have authority over that landfill. We can manage what comes into it.
I'm just asking because are we being a good neighbor to our county?
I think this helps us maintain the landfill at a high standard. So yes, it helps us control what we're bringing in. Absolutely.
It keeps our costs down as
Yeah.
far as not filling up somebody who's out in the county. I
And
would
the
think.
rates, the tiered rates that we've established just in the last year have an expectation of what we're bringing in, of capacity that we bring in annually, tens, hundreds of thousands of tons. We want to maintain that standard. We don't want to outstrip that with debris, construction debris, all kinds of waste that comes in that we can't maintain completely outside the county. So what we do when we look at hauls that come in, we monitor those waste loads. We have ways of identifying where they come from. Of course, we ask the drivers, where is this waste coming from? If it's in the city, we can verify with a permit typically, or we can verify with an address of a resident. Of course, we know our trucks. If we have these agreements, we know what the company is. Company truck comes in, we can very easily vet that and hold that accountable. But we turn a lot of trucks away because we can't determine where it's come from. And if it's not coming from the Nacogdoches County area, we do turn it away.
We just spent $360,000 for a new for a liner for Block O cells 3 and 4, and you fill this up real quick, then you're going to have to turn around next week and do it again.
Well, let me just add, we're looking at everything to be fair, but not at the expense of the city.
Right. Well,
On
we've done that
everything,
enough.
because we're already
Over the years.
we've been doing that. We're reviewing all of our other. I can think of some other examples with the county, with an invoice we sent on dispatch that wasn't invoiced for 10 years, and that was at the expense of the city, not the other way around, and that was on OT. So we'll be neighborly, but again, you have half the sales tax as your peer cities. You have the oldest infrastructure. You can't, or we can't, as an entity, have anything that isn't at least a net equal. So that's how we're approaching it. In a perfect world, yeah, we'll make money off of stuff, but we have to reverse the model of giving it away.
So I have watched cities be destroyed by providing all of the service and only having the city's taxes. So I fully applaud not having people outside of the city, outside of the city pay their share of what our infrastructure costs are, and across the board. So I think this is a great thing. Can you give me an example of the kinds of things we might have been taking, like last year unknowingly, that now we'll be able to screen a little better?
Generally, like I mentioned about permits, so roll-off containers come in, that may be another category of agreements that we look to bring forward to the council. It's typically construction debris, it's materials from a project, commercial renovation or residential renovation project that has some tie to our permit. So we issue permits for those things. When those projects create debris, they bring in roll-off containers and then they dump them at our landfill. Perfectly fine. But we use that permit, or we use that verification of residential address to determine, or commercial address, to determine that it's actually within the city. It's much harder to do in the county area because there is no similar permit process within the county. And we don't have that engagement with the county to vet a lot of things that come in. They'll say they come from the county, and we can kind of get there with determining or inspecting loads that come in. Construction debris, if it's from a certain area, we can generally determine that, yes, it did come from that part of Nacogdoches County, but it's a little bit harder. Without these agreements in place, this just gives us another tool to be able to vet and just control what's coming in.
And what is the outside of the city rate?
It's a little bit different. If I would give you a rough picture, it's at 1.5 times typically
Like the
of
water.
in-city rate. Mhm.
Like the water, similar to that, okay.
And one of the things we want to emphasize, and maybe bringing forward soon, is right now we're reevaluating our construction debris, what that rate is, how they pay, and particularly with roll-off containers, if there are roll-off services provided, we may look at that rate and if it's appropriate for where we are now. We do expect a lot more construction, a lot more activity within our area. If those rates are higher outside the city, it does cover a lot of that expense because construction debris tends to be the largest taker of our capacity when we do bring those in.
Is there danger of hazardous materials in that construction debris?
There is, but we do inspect those hauls. And the drivers and the source of those materials are typically held accountable when we find it. Easiest thing to do is turn them away when they're inspected. And that's always something that we look for at the landfill.
I mean, we could very easily end up inside the city or outside. Someone trying to dispose of a house that's been torn down that has asbestos in it, as an
Yeah,
example.
that's what I
So,
was thinking, is
there's-
asbestos and lead.
Yeah,
you
we
know.
have to monitor it. Yeah, correct.
To give you, to be more specific about our local permitting, when roll-off containers come in with construction debris, we ask for a copy of the permit and typically would have an asbestos report with it.
So I am going to reiterate that I have seen cities that provide so much service to all of the surrounding areas. And I'll give an example. Our parks, many of our parks are used by people outside, and yet we do all the maintenance and all the, I once asked somebody in one organization, how many of those children live inside the city that you're talking about? And he said, well, I don't think hardly any of them do. And I said, and you are asking that the city is going to do something to help, we need to help our own children if we have to, have sliding fee scales or something to help our children in our city, so.
Well,
That's
another
right.
example is some of our growth outside the city limits.
Right.
We've had other requests about water extensions, even though that's out of, and then invariably the answer ends up being, oh, but you'll also get the sales tax. Well, you're not getting the property tax, and you're actually getting half the sales tax. So by the time you net it out, you net out police and fire and everything else, wear and tear on roads.
Right.
Is it a benefit? Maybe sometimes, maybe not all the time.
And we do not have a wealthy tax base. I mean, we do not have, our housing is not spectacularly wealthy for our, as you know. So it really is important, and I applaud you for.
And much
all
like
those
our
things.
outside water consumers, our outside haulers that pay those higher rates help sustain our sanitation fund. So in some respect, we do want a percentage of that coming from Nacogdoches County area because they do pay those higher rates. It supplements these expansions. It helps pay to maintain the landfill, and it's just part of our service.
Okay, any other questions?
Yes, sir.
What Eco Waste has.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I'll welcome Sonny Hubbard.
Appreciate it. I'm Sonny Hubbard. I also am a civil engineer. Went to school at Texas Tech. I've built 2 buildings in my life, and I've never built a paved road. But I have built 7 landfills, 4 transfer stations, and 4 hauling companies. But anyway, what SCS, I've known those guys for years. They know what they're doing, so you guys are in good hands. I'm the TCEQ guy for the company, and I've been doing this for over 55 years. My father was in the business from 58 on through about 90 before he retired. So I've thrown a sack of garbage in the back of the truck a time or two. What I do for the company right now is I handle 32 city contracts and other council members, although, you know, we don't haul y'all as a customer, but I would come to y'all's meeting. But I have to tell you this is the best dressed council and staff that I've ever been to. You ought to see some of these people I run across. You guys look good.
I move that we approve anything you.
But the cost of building a landfill right now is about $400,000 an acre by the time you get it completed. So, you know, they're putting this plastic liner in, it's expensive. What we do as a hauling company is we have to dump here, so we don't pay you. Our customers pay you. That's the way everybody is. If y'all go up to $100 a cubic yard, the guy's gonna be paying more garbage bill than they pay electric bill. So, you know, it's just everybody's passed the money around. We hate to see the bills go up. Fuel last year, when it went to $5 a gallon, we added $2 for every 6 miles that our truck drove, because they'll get about 6 miles to the gallon, and a gallon of gas was $2 more than what it was. You know, if you're gonna stay in business, just like you were mentioning a while ago, things have gotta pay for themselves. We don't wanna see things go up, but we can dump, and we're not gonna end up paying for it. It's gonna be passed through to the customer. So as long as everybody's on the same page, we don't have any problem with people going up. As long as y'all force the other companies to do what we have to do, that's competitive, that's America, that's the way things are. So that really doesn't bother us, because as long as everybody's doing the same thing.
Okay.
So anyway, we have dumped a lot of garbage here. I was a 9-year Piney Woods guy, and when the Webbers decided to sell the company, I stayed on with Live Oak Environmental, that's owned by Eco Waste, simply because I'm so old. I'll be 78 in October. And so nobody's gonna hire me, so I had to stay on with them as long as they'll keep me. So anyway, we appreciate being able to come into the landfill. But you were asking, and that's the way the business is. You tell us what it's gonna cost, and the people that we pick up are gonna pay for it. Around the Nacogdoches area, we pick up about 20,000 customers. So you'll be getting, and believe me, you got to have the revenue coming in, just like the parks you were mentioning a while ago. You gotta have the revenue coming in, or you can't be in business. TCQ's gonna come in here, and the laws are now, they're criminal, although they're civil too. But they come in and say, who's going to jail and who's staying to pay the check? So you have to do what the TCEQ says. And I think that your guys have got it under control. But all of these $300,000, $400,000, $200,000 bills, there's a reason for that. And there's nothing you can do about it if you're gonna be in the landfill business. Because the TCEQ will win. And so it's just up to y'all to keep everything straight. But we appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
And we're gonna bring you in some garbage, gonna write you a check every month, so, that's what we're looking for. Any questions on our part?
Thank you, sir.
All right.
The Webbers, ran out of people. They had Piney Woods for 28 years. Mr. Weber, he, developed Alzheimer, and he actually passed away. One son that was president of the company I never met because he couldn't travel. The 2 grandsons graduated college, and they went their own way. And the one guy that was left said, I've been doing this 28 years and I'm tired. So they sold the company. I hated to see it, but my dad sold his company. Waste Management did not haul garbage as Waste Management. There are 1,000 companies that they bought. Republic is the same way. Lilly just sold to Republic. So in this business, everybody does this. So it's just keeping up the personal conversations with everybody and knowing what you have to have. So just bear with us, we appreciate it, we thank you, and, like I said, we'll give you all a check every month, so.
Thank you.
Any
Thank-
questions?
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Thank you.
Good to see
Thank you very
everybody,
much.
thank you.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion. I'll make a motion for the approval of a franchise agreement with Live Oak Environmental LLC, doing business as Eco Waste Solutions for the disposal of solid waste collected in Nacogdoches County at the Nacogdoches County landfill.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Item 6E, consider approval of Resolution 1419-07-26, authorizing the filing of a water supply and infrastructure grant application to request financial assistance from the Texas Water Development Board. Mr. Opperman.
Mayor, City Council, Case Opperman, Director of Public Works and City Engineer again. Bringing to you tonight a resolution to apply for the water supply and infrastructure grant opportunity that we spoke about in the previous meetings. We do need a resolution from council to make this application. Again, as a reminder, this WSIG program was from the $1 billion that TWDB was given to administer by the House Bill 500 in the 89th legislative session. These are 100% grants to eligible cities, counties, and other political subdivisions. These projects have to address water loss or TCQ violations or providing additional water supply, but they have to meet one of those goals. And so drainage, sewer, those are not eligible projects for this grant opportunity. But applications are due in about 9 days, and so we've got to get a resolution to be able to do that, and so we're bringing that to you tonight. As a reminder from what we've talked about previously, commitments do start this fall, but awarded projects have to be completely constructed by February of 2031. So we got to hustle on these projects if we are lucky enough to be granted this opportunity. Y'all did select Pape Dawson for professional services for this last month on June 16th. And so this resolution before you this evening authorizes filing of the application for this WSIG opportunity. It delegates signatory authority in the event that we do get funded, and so we do request to, we do intend to request the full 21 million that we're eligible for. That's based on population size, and so we would aim to basically fund as much of our CIP as we can on the water side with this money. And so we've got several major transmission mains. We've got a ton of water lines that need to be replaced. And so we feel confident that we can utilize that money as best we can. And so happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions, or I'll make a motion?
Oh, I have questions.
Oh,
Sorry.
Okay,
So, is this, did you all go up on the request? If I remember, you weren't going to request quite that much, and I was thinking, oh, what a shame, I wish you would request it all.
So we got some clarifications after. I think I did say that in the meeting where we were choosing Pape Dawson. We initially understood from the TWDB that, and from meetings we had been to, that you could apply for a project.
Right.
So we were saying, okay, well, what's the biggest project we've got on our radar that could utilize this money that we feel like we could expend in the 4 years that we have? Well, that was basically the major transmission line between Southwest Pump Station and the Loop. That would have been about 7 to 8 million is what our estimates are. Well,
Right.
once Pape Dawson got awarded the contract and we got into more discussions and meetings with them, they were actually able to basically verify that it's project or projects. And so we were not limited to one project. We were able to do multiple project locations. And so when we found that out, we're like, well, we got a lot more we need to build. And so happy to not use the CIP money to pay for it if we don't have to. So, yes, you are correct. We did initially believe that, but luckily we were able to get a little better definition on what the eligibility is, and so hopefully we can get 21 million this time.
So will Pate Dawson be doing the entire, or how are you?
Yeah, so they've been working with us on basically lining ourselves out, making sure we know everything we're supposed to do. They are our professional services consultant, and so they will handle application, making the formal application. In the event we're granted these funds, they will work as our grant administrator, our designer. They'll do construction admin, all those things. Basically, full service for our professional services needs to keep us in compliance with the program.
Well, the only other thing I'm going to say is, I really believe you're about 3 steps ahead of, not just 1 step ahead, but, having already determined, who you're going to use and lined out your projects and everything. And I know we all appreciate you all applying for these dollars and
Well, thank you.
hopefully relieving some
We'll
of the
keep our
burden.
fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we'll be blessed.
Can they award a partial piece of this rather than the whole thing?
I think it's all or nothing. And Danny's here; he can shed some light on it. But I think it's pretty much if you are selected, then you'll get the full amount.
He's going to
Well,
answer it.
go
for
ahead,
you.
Danny.
Danny Hayes, Pate Dawson. Yes, what they're doing is the way the program's set up is a scoring model, and it's based on your annual median household income. And so there's a scoring model there that gives you a score, and they just got on the list. Most people are in every category. There's multiple population categories. You're in the $21 million max. The next one down is 10 million. 6 million is the lowest. Anybody over 150,000 population has to be shovel ready, construction ready. So there's a little bit of difference there, but they just go down the list. And if someone asks for less, if someone asks for 18, they get 18. I've got some in the smaller population groups that they could get 10, but their project is only 6. So they're asking for 6. So that's how the money will they'll just go down the list.
Do they think that makes it better odds for them to ask for less?
I don't know that it does. I think it's more project specific. It's more their needs. I've got one that it was $10 million in the population category below y'all, and it worked out $10 million to do that project. Another one is at 6. Another one's at 3. It's just those various cities have different needs. And when we looked at it, and just knowing, working in this town for 25 years like I have, there's a lot of water infrastructure that we have, and I felt confident we could come up with enough project work to maximize that and get you guys a long way into your CIP.
Great.
Thank you.
So,
Thanks,
So,
Danny.
Any other questions?
Can we spend it all by the deadline?
We're gonna do everything we can. We're pretty pretty diligent about asking about that, and so KSA, or I keep saying KSA, they should have never changed their name. Pate Dawson, they feel confident that they can get us all designed and constructed, and so that's what we're gonna try to do. And Danny also did in our last meeting, I think, if I remember right, he guaranteed he was gonna trip and drop a couple of the other applications in the trash on the way to the mailbox, and so.
So bad.
All right, any,
I'll add one more thing to your point, Councilmember. We are going to target projects that are simple in nature. Okay, water line improvements in the ground, doesn't require additional right of way, doesn't necessarily require, it may, but doesn't necessarily require easements. Things that are going to prolong the time frame of these projects getting done. We're kind of excluding those. Things that don't have land already secured. We have an elevated storage tank project that's on our CIP, but we don't have land for it. So those kinds of things that may draw out a project in terms of time won't be included, but we have so many of the water line improvement projects that we've lined up that you'll see when you do the final consideration of our capital improvement plan for this next budget year. These are all going to be packed into this, so we'll keep it simple.
any other questions?
I'm happy to make a motion.
Okay.
if you're-
Thank you.
Okay. I make the motion that we approve Resolution 1419-07-26 as outlined in item 6E.
Second.
Have a motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Okay, we're gonna kind of change directions a little bit tonight. We're going to adjourn into executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.071 and 551.072. We will adjourn into executive session and come back and finish our agenda item number 9, budget question and answers. Okay, we're returning from executive session at 6:43 p.m. and pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.071 and 551.072. Any action?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the contract by and between the City of Nacogdoches and John Mass Separate Property LP for the purchase of 1.645 acres out of Lot 6, Block 68 in the City of Nacogdoches, and grant the city manager the authority to sign any and all contracts related to it.
Second.
Have a motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Okay, now we're going back into regular session and consider the last item, 6A, which is question and answers, discussing the budget, discussion regarding council questions about information related to the fiscal year 2027 proposed budget. How do you want to do this, Todd? You want to just...
Well, let me make an opening statement before I unleash the accountants. Sorry. So what we did, we obviously collected everyone's questions since the last meeting. We're going to run through by department, hopefully with minimal comedic interjection by me, but some possibly at different times.
Thank you.
About, Brad, maybe about the location of motels in the 1970s, different construction locations.
Strike one.
Okay, there you go. So on that note, Todd is going to hit some of the high points, kind of just general budget stuff by department, some of those questions first, and about over and under on income versus expenses and so forth. And also the first stuff he's going to hit is the process, which we're obviously trying to get as much information from the CAD on what is being protested right now and what that timeline looks like.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. So, Mayor and Council, thank you, Todd Semino, Interim Finance Director. So, before we get to your questions and answers, just a recap of where we've been and what we need to do in the budget process. As you know, we met July 7th to have a budget workshop, and we ran out of time to sufficiently answer all of your questions, so that's why we're here today.
Todd, I don't think your mic is on.
It's not.
Looks like all of these are off.
There we go. You good?
Hello? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I think I'm on now, yeah.
Yeah.
So again, we met July 7th to have a budget workshop. We ran out of time to sufficiently answer council questions about the budget workshop, so that's why we're here tonight. Just as a reminder, August 18th, we'll meet again to have another budget workshop. We'll actually present the proposed budget to you at that time. And we'll, in a regular meeting, we'll ask you to set hearing dates for the budget and for the tax rate. And also on August 18th, we will ask you to have a record vote for a proposed maximum tax rate so we can get that published in the newspaper. Then on September 1st, we'll have our public hearing on the budget. You do have an option to approve the budget that day. We're going to recommend that you postpone the approval of the budget till September 15th. That's when you're going to have your tax rate hearing, and then on that day, after the tax rate hearing, you can adopt the budget, establish tax rate, and then ratify the budget. Next slide. Okay, so the first question I'm here to answer is, do we have an update on the values anticipated from our CAD? So I talked to the chief appraiser yesterday. They're actually meeting today. I don't know if it's already happened or not. The appraisal review board is meeting. They had over 3,000 properties that were being contested through the appraisal review board. So that's what they're meeting on tonight. tonight also, just between two entities that own minerals within the county, they're protesting over $280 million just on two entities. So all that to say, the chief appraiser told me he would call me tomorrow to see if they worked through all of their contests on those values or not. If so, they're going to try to meet the July 25th for a certified roll. If not, they're going to give us their best estimate until the roll is certified. As you know, they can't certify the roll until 95% of the property's been resolved, and that's countywide. So it's not just city property; it's county property. So even though the county might certify 95% of the roll in the past, we've had under 95% certified when we're trying to get our tax rates. So just wanted to give you an update on that. The next question I'm here to answer is, can you share a probable proposed budget by department? So willing to do that now. We're going to pull up a sheet to do that. So what you're looking at here is the proposed budget for 2027 for the general fund.
I'm sorry, do we have a copy of this, or do we not?
We can make copies and hand them out afterwards if you'd like.
Yeah, if you would.
Okay, so what you're looking at here, like as you can see, the first column is the current year's budget as amended. The second column is a draft, a proposal for next year's budget, and then you can see a dollar variance and a change of percentage from one year to the year. The rows that are highlighted in yellow, we just picked 3%, really for the expenses, not so much for the revenues. So, Kevin, if you could just scroll down and kind of go to the departments. This is where you're going to lead me on your questions. I don't have specific questions on this, so if there's any area in the general fund you want to look at, if you want to go back and look at the revenues, or if you just want to jump right into the expenditures and maybe look at some of the yellow rows, just let me know where you want to go, and we'll do our best to answer all the questions.
Well, I can tell you right off the bat, I'm going to need at least an hour to look through it, or 2 hours, or whatever. I mean,
Can I get a chair?
I'm just saying, I can't ask questions based on these numbers that are just, shown right now, but, so.
Again, this is the working spreadsheet type
Right.
document.
Right.
We can get you the static one, but I think it would make sense to let us talk through this in the general categories. We did not anticipate we were going to dive into subcategories, which I would, again, I've seen that approach in budgets before. I think I talked about it in the retreat. I would not recommend ultra deep dives. We have all of the department heads that if we want to get deeper into each one, we can do that. Probably on some of those functional questions. Some of the other questions may answer some of the big picture questions y'all may have too.
Well, if we just get a copy of this, I mean, just, your
Yeah, we can
current
get-
working
Yeah,
document
we'll
would
get
be
you
very
that.
helpful.
Yeah, we'll get you that.
Okay, like today, tomorrow, or whatever. So
Yeah, I mean, we can, yeah.
just a working document. Thank you.
Okay.
But I can't tell you my questions on those.
Okay. Would you like me to walk over some of the highlights, even though we've already done it in a workshop, or?
Well,
I mean, we can do that.
I think the main thing that Todd wants to point out is we've got several areas we're backing off on, some that are coming down slightly, some that, again, I've talked about, some of the costs are going to go up. Let's just, again, let me just take out of the first ones, out of the city manager's office, which also includes Krista, which includes the chief of staff. I'm going to back that down to just some contract dollars, because we have our mix of staff, and we put this together originally. We didn't have the same mix of staff. So, but I do want to keep some contract authority in there. If you look at Karen's, to pick on Karen, since she's so perfect and quiet, hers is higher because there's more election cycles. That's why that's higher. But we can dive into some areas potentially that Todd has kind of looked at where we may have some increases. We're going to have to talk about the insurance. We're waiting on some of the final numbers on that as well. And then some things just cost more, And again, we've got all the departments here, but overall, you know, we're asking for, you know, personnel-wise, 3 more rookies coming into the police department. We've got some assumptions on, again, look at the total under general government. It's basically what CPI is at the moment, 4.5%. We didn't do that as a hard target, but it's pretty close to what CPI is, although I think by the end of the year, CPI will be higher.
Yeah, if you want to go back up to the revenue section, I can just walk through some of the highlights again. So as you can see, the property taxes, it looks like we'll get an extra $600,000 in revenue. That's if we go with the voter approval rate. That's 5%. You might be asking, well, you know, your growth in revenue is capped at 3.5%, so why 5%? So we're just comparing budget to budget. We're actually going to come in higher than the $11,900,000 that we budgeted last year. And I think there's 2 reasons for that. One is we budgeted to have a collection rate on property taxes of 95%. I think I've told y'all. And then we're having a collection ratio of higher than 95%. Usually you want at least 99%. So our collection rate went up also. It goes back to contested values. When the values are contested, when your roll is certified, and you still have properties that are still out at the appraisal review board, they always do the lowest value they can. So by the time that property is settled on the value, it could be higher, which would generate more revenue. So that's why the increase in property taxes is 5% instead of 3.5%. Sales and use tax, same thing. We only budgeted a 1.75% increase on sales tax, but we're actually going to realize maybe 9.1 million this year instead of the 8.7 that you see there. Let's see, the miscellaneous revenue, that goes back to mainly the contract with the county for dispatch billing, you know, where we found we need to start billing them for overtime, things like that. And then the intergovernmental revenues, or receipts rather, that large increase is because, you know, we're budgeting for revenue that we're going to receive from TIFNS, because we know we're going to have TIFNS expenses on the fire department side.
That's for the deployment.
Right.
That's for the fire deployments where we show overtime, but they weren't being booked until later in the fiscal year, so they weren't appearing in the front end of the budget, which we're now showing.
So overall, an increase of $1.9 million in revenue for next year.
Quick question, Todd. On property, we're talking about revenues now. And we have basically 2 sources of revenue that really amount to anything. Property taxes. Are you counting in there us receiving the $400,000 to $500,000 that's owed to us by the Nacogdoches Hospital District? Because
No,
That's not it.
we didn't account for it because we've obviously moved to take next steps on it, but we didn't know if it would book in this
okay, all right,
with certainty.
okay. And then the sales tax, we're budgeting $9.2 million for next year, right?
Correct.
Okay, and if we weren't giving away 1% of that, that would be $18.4 million in sales tax, which if you take that, that would reduce, if I remember correctly, your property taxes by 40 cents per hundred.
Right. Yeah, I think I estimated 41 to 42 cents.
And you want to know where well, we don't have any revenue? And you want to know why your property taxes are so high? This is why.
And I'll go back to one other item. I know you've probably seen it in different forms in some of our prior discussions, but if you go back to the senior tax freeze and then the business personal property tax that's being effective this year, cumulatively between those 2 since 2025, that puts us down in property tax value by about $900,000. So that's kind of contextually too, sitting on top of those draft budget numbers, that we would be higher on those, but obviously, you know, those do have an impact. Now, when the senior tax freeze was adopted, I think in 22, the first year was only like $50,000 impact. So And then it grew, I think, to a couple 100,000, but now it's substantial. It's over 600,000. And then obviously the business personal property piece, you went from 185,000 of exemptions to 51 million of exemptions, which translates in our case 250,000 or so.
Todd, I have a question about that. The senior tax freeze, does that mean we actually collect less, or is the burden shifted?
Well,
That's,
I guess it depends on how you look at, really the burden shifts.
right, it's not
Right.
that we're collecting any less money because of it. And actually, the majority of the people who voted for that senior tax freeze were not seniors. And the motion was not made by a senior. So I just wanted to clarify that. That senior tax freeze was made because so many of our elderly seniors who owned homes were strapped. So it's not taking any money out of our pocket right now at all.
Right.
And
I mean,
that's why it was
yeah.
voted on in,
Yeah, definitely if you
22.
go with the voter approval rate, which is a max rate, you're just shifting the burden. If you do something that's under the voter approval rate, there could be an argument you're leaving money on the table. But like I said, we're
but
always
we're leaving
suggesting.
it on the table no matter what,
Right.
whether it's seniors or other people. I want to make that, I
There
just
was,
wanted
there
to
was
make
only
that
two
point.
people on this council that right now that voted for that.
Right.
And it was, the rest of us.
Right, but but the majority were under the,
don't
were
care
not seniors.
where they
I just
were or
thought
not.
I'd explain that to you.
The
And the city explained it would not impact.
Well, and
the
that,
income.
I think that the one item to consider is the fact, I think it's been a larger impact than what was initially thought of. I'll just leave it at that. And you also have to look at it this way. Yes, you've got folks that are frozen, but you also have now some of the younger folks that it's shifting to, the tax burden. Now houses are exponentially more expensive to even the cost of entry. So for the same product,
Well, whether it's a good or a bad idea, I mean, we could debate that, but the entire council voted
No,
in,
no,
in
I'm not
2022.
debating it. We're
This
just showing you
council
where the
didn't vote
revenue.
on it.
Right, but the
The
entire.
prior council.
We're just
voted
showing you
on
where
it.
the,
It
what the
wasn't this council.
revenue deltas and deficiencies are in different areas.
But that is not one. We actually are getting that money. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, if you want to scroll down to expenses.
So can we go back
Oh,
up just
sure.
for a second?
Yeah.
You were talking about the realized revenue on the property tax for this year.
Mm-hmm.
What is that actual number? Do we know as of right now what we've actually seen from revenue? I know you said that delta is not actually 5%.
Right. So I think the 3.5% increase equated to like $415,000 of revenue. As you can see, we're 601,000 over. So we're going to get like 12.1 million this year. Is that what?
No, that was the question.
Okay. All right.
I just wanted to know if our collection rate, what was it? I know 2 years ago we said it was extremely low. Have we actually gotten to that goal of 99% collections, or?
So it's not, we don't collect, the CAD collects, so that's a benchmark. Usually it's 98% and above for most cities that I've seen. So you, really 99% and above. But yeah, we're getting back to that standard.
So is it typical that CADs are the ones that collect the property taxes?
So usually you have a CAD, then you have a separate tax assessor collector, but I think they're both combined here.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I'm on that board. I've been asking them because people were complaining about property values. Sorry. And at the same time, sales were lower, staying on the market longer. And I'm like, how come you're still raising values even though it's obvious to everybody that things are lower? And they said, well, we go back 2 years. So we have to wait 2 years for property values to change before we follow that lead. So that 2 years is up. So I think they're going to come in lower than you expect because they're having to deal with reality now. The reality of lower house sales, lower prices, longer on the market. I don't know
Yeah,
that for a fact. I'm just telling you that you should be careful with your optimism.
Well, I do think it'll be the actual sale price, not how long they sit. It's if they transact. And there has to be, like anything else, there has to be some comps. So if you have some odd ones that aren't really a one-to-one, it'll depend probably on how many transact actually and what that kind of implies across all the different categories of comps. So I think that will, the lower volume, and I know we had some realtors here earlier, the lower volume alone doesn't indicate anything, but what they actually transact at will, what the price per foot will come.
Well, and I know that there's been price cuts over the last 2 years on properties rather than that steady climb that was
Oh,
going
yeah,
on.
and that's a national trend, but I don't think ours has been as precipitous as, say, the Hill Country where you can't give a house away.
But relative to Nacogdoches, it's not this, it's this and this.
It's flatter, but I don't think we haven't had a 25% drop in every category, probably because of SFA's growth. And the rent rolls have actually went the other direction. So I think the rent rolls have actually went up. So that's some indication we have a stronger market, but not across all categories.
Well, I can't speak for the CAD. I just want you to have a dose of reality here.
I don't have any optimism. I just take their report and plug the numbers in.
Okay, well, yeah.
He's an accountant.
Numbers guy.
I'm not a realtor,
I'm
I'm
not-
not an accountant. I'm
Yeah.
just a guy.
Well, and we did have the preliminary numbers that said that the valuations were lower. I mean, that's not a shock to us that,
Well, I've been doing this 20 years. I've never seen valuations drop from one year to another. Our valuations actually dropped 119 million. Only 50 million was attributable to the new exemption. So even if you take away that exemption, your value still dropped. I've not seen that happen before.
And the caveat I'll add to that is you've actually had new commercial construction. And so, and you haven't had a precipitous drop in homes. You've probably had some drop. It doesn't seem like a corresponding one-to-one ratio, especially if you have new construction of any type. But commercial, those are usually net adds. I mean, really think about it, as much as I'd like Long John Silver's back, you've got, Tractor Supply and lanes and the redone where the Aldi is, and you've got more stuff coming. So you've got the new Chick-fil-A. It's not like the old building went away. It's still there. So the net decline of that much is kind of a red flag. And Todd has asked that question of the CAD as well. And I don't know if the question was really clearly answered.
I suspect the reason is when you have 3,000 parcels being contested, and when they're being contested, you have to go with the lowest of, I think it's the current year appraised value or the prior year appraised value, or what the homeowner or business owner is saying what the value is. You got to go with the lower of those three until you flush it out through the appraisal review board. So when you have hundreds of millions of dollars being contested, 3,000 parcels, that's a lot. So I'm assuming that's why your values are low right now, and hopefully the appraisal review board will come back with something at least in the middle.
Yeah.
We'll just see how it
And you have
turns out.
more contested ones because people feel broke. They feel like their property taxes have gone up too much compared to what they can afford.
Well, usually you can test your values because of the value of your property, not what you can and can't afford, but I see what you're saying. In other words, you have to have damage to your property or something that contributes to why your property value is going down, not just because tax rates are increasing.
Brad, you have someone over a central appraisal district that's gonna have a guideline of exactly where you should be as far as property values.
Yeah.
And if you're not there, they're gonna know why, and that's part of it right there. I dealt with it on the school board. I've dealt with it on cities, and that's why Gary Woods was always in Austin. I mean, he was trying to defend his low appraisals, and sooner or later, time runs out.
Yeah, I'm not speaking for the CAD. I'm just speaking as just a regular person that's observing things go on. Just urging a little bit of caution here on your numbers.
I just compute what their numbers are. I don't hypothesize
You
on
don't
what the
make 'em
numbers
up,
are gonna
do you?
be.
So Todd, why the intergovernmental receipts, you said why that is so much higher?
We actually budgeted to receive reimbursements from TIFMAS for the fire deployment
Oh, right.
because we know we
Fire
get those every year.
Okay, right.
In the past, they weren't budgeted, but neither were the expenditures. So we budgeted, I think, $480,000 of expenditures, and so to basically wash that out, we have $480,000 within that 523 for TIFMAS reimbursement.
That's really helpful to see it as a clean item like that. Thank you.
And if you go ahead and expand that, so you can see that, looks like it's going to be, oh, it was at the top of it. See that 480,000 under miscellaneous grant
Yes,
receipts?
yes.
That's the
Right.
account that we budgeted for
Okay.
the 480 for TIFMAS.
That's really helpful. Thanks.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah, I like all the other ones too.
So would it be possible for us to get view-only access on this? Don't want to change it.
It's in Smart Sheets. I'm not the technology guy, so
It would just be helpful to be able to look through it. Not that I
Yeah.
have any, complaints about anything. It's just nice to be able to see those drop downs and see where those receipts and expenditures are going,
Right.
where we're budgeting it.
And if you're curious about the $9,000 drop in license and permits, he can open that up too. That's what's really good about this. You can see all the different accounts that go in there.
Yeah.
And it's because I think there was some regulation changes on the alcoholic beverage permits.
Interesting.
I think
This is
that think that might be more beneficial than a static document.
I'd like both. It'd be great.
Yeah, we'll get you whatever you request. So if we're through with revenue, if not, we can move to expenditures?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go for it.
So we flagged city council because it's over 3%, but you can see the dollar amount's $1,000, so we won't talk about that. City manager already talked about why his
You can
budget's.
reduce that if you want to. You didn't spend a dime on me. If you want to reduce it, take it down. Take it down to what
I
it
mean,
was last year.
there's not much there to reduce, but we can look at it again. City manager's budget's decreasing. I think the city manager already kind of explained that. City secretary, as I mentioned on the last workshop, that extra is because we're planning for maybe 2 elections instead of 1. Financial services pretty much flat. Information technology, you can go ahead and expand that if you want to. I think on July 7th, I told you that was because of some Laserfish, Smart Sheets, Google Workspaces, licensing and networks. So if there's any of that you want to ask, Dennis is here. That's probably where that $121,000 is on.
We have had a lot of catching up to do.
Right.
On that stuff.
So in my opinion, we need to spend whatever it takes to keep us safe and functional. So that's one of
Right.
the reasons I was asking about human resources kind of technology, if we need to be brought into this century.
Right.
So,
Legal services, I think that was a contract renegotiation, so that's the majority of that. And non-departmental, that was the other one that was over 3%, which I told you guys last time. That's where we basically pay all of our liability insurance, our fees to the CAD are in there, and then all of our utilities are in there. So that accounts for that 189,000.
okay.
And then as you can see, total governmental expenditures increased 4.5%, budget to budget. Like the city manager said, CPI is right at 4.2. So now we're into public safety. So if we want to look in in police, we'll start there, but
Always picking on fire, aren't you?
yeah, just jumping ahead. So, so police, like I told you last time, the majority of those expenditures that are increasing are in vehicle supplies, gas, and vehicle maintenance. That could change if we go with the enterprise fleet rental. It's going to make things a lot more efficient. Again, we'll have a workshop on that in August. There's some IT maintenance in police. There's also communication services increasing, training increasing, and special services that were increasing. And if you want, you can go ahead and expand that. If y'all would like to discuss any of that, I'm sure Chief Williams would have to come up here and walk you through it. But as you can see, a lot of it's in maintenance.
Yeah, equipment. So what are we contracting out?
Are you able to open that one too, Kevin?
Because it's gone up 44%. That's the,
So the communication services piece, someone else would have, do you? Alright.
So,
what are the big changes in your,
the big changes on the communications side of it is that we inherited most of the IT budget. It got pushed back over to where it belonged. We also bought phones, cell phones for all the officers, because we started using those phones to write tickets through the Brazos system. So, like I said, there's an app, a Brazos app. You can write your tickets, you can get the evidence. There was no way that we needed to continue that the officers use their personal cell phones.
If y'all want to blame me for signing off on that, y'all can, because I hadn't seen that before, and that was a very easy decision. They did not need to use their personal devices
Great
for
idea.
city business.
Right.
Creates way too much liability for
Right.
the officer. And so that's a portion of it. The others were Fidium. Fidium is for the phone service for dispatch. Dennis hooked that up, and now we have decent phone service in dispatch where it's much needed for 911. Other than that, Dennis, off the
Only thing we have is, we did move, my net system.
you had, this is so you can be recorded for posterity.
Okay. Yes, we did move our TLET system, our system that the officers use for the state. That was operated off of a satellite network. And we brought that to locally through, it's called an SD-WAN connection, basically a secure internet, an additional expense. Communications is, as you well know, is very expensive, and we're slowly meeting the bar of we're years behind of where we need to be.
Thanks.
I thought he was going to use more IT jargon, so I wanted him up here. We can go a little deeper now that we're on PD.
I don't
if
think
you
it's
want to.
necessary that we go any deeper on this. This is
But it's really helpful to see this, and not just as far as like funding, but to see what we're doing
Right.
in the departments. It's really helpful.
Great improvements,
Mm-hmm.
and taking the
Nice to know.
liability off of the officers and putting it back on the city where it actually belongs.
That's right. Thank
So.
you for doing that.
Any more questions for me?
Oh, thank you.
Thank you,
Well,
Chief.
thank y'all.
Okay, so we'll go to fire next. So as you can see in personnel services, a lot of it's there, and that's because I believe the overtime. Can you go ahead and expand that, Kevin? So there's 35,000 that is new. That's basically deployment costs. You can see that administrative cost deployment. There's 260,000 that's new in overtime. That's also deployment reimbursable cost. And then towards the bottom, there's $105,000 new, and that's the fringe benefits that we get reimbursed on. So that's the majority of it. It's all related to deployment costs.
So this is just booking those expenses in the right place.
Right.
it's an
In
offset.
advance.
It's
Right.
an offset.
And then, like I said, we got the revenue to offset it. So
Yeah.
our operating income's basically flat. We just wanted to show it in here and true it up, since we know we get those every year. And I'll also say this, you know, these fire deployments are actually almost like a profit center for the city, because not only do they reimburse actual costs, you can see they're reimbursing wages, they're reimbursing overtime, they're reimbursing down to the benefit level, and then they also reimburse just for the hours that we use our equipment. So that's a non-cash outflow for us, but it's cash inflow. So that helps them put some money aside for some of those fire engines. So if we get out of personnel. I think, let's see, they also had some increases for, you know, their bunker gear that they gotta wear. Let's see, what else did I have? Vehicle maintenance, and that was basically it. So if y'all wanna do a dive into any of these accounts,
So the contract services almost doubled, that's the,
yeah, let's take a look at that, Kevin. Oh, $80,000, travel and training, deployment reimbursement. So that's new.
and we recouped that?
Yes.
Okay, that's all, okay, thank you.
Yep. I think that's gonna be it for public safety unless y'all have any more questions on that. Okay, if you skip down to parks and cemeteries, that's the next one that only had over 3%. And I think last time I had told y'all there's some portable restrooms that we're contracting for. We don't even think we'll need all of that. I think it's just gonna be a partial year instead of a whole year. And then there's some cemetery software that they needed. So that really accounts for the increase in parks and cemeteries. Okay.
Great.
And then the only other increase was transfers. Go ahead and open that. Those, obviously, we're transferring more money to the airport, basically. Airport Construction Fund and Airport FBO Fund. So if you go all the way to the bottom, Kevin, and show the operating income. So for next year, it looks like the operating income is $975,000, but what's not in this budget yet, and I'll just kind of walk it over with you real quick. I told you last time at July 7th, we're gonna need to transfer more money to the insurance fund because we're projected to, and it's on the financials we give you guys every month, we're projected to go into reserves by $1.2 million. Thank goodness we have over $3 million in that fund. We have initial conversations with our consultants, and they're telling us that we probably need to increase our contributions to this fund by at least 15%. So that's going to be another $560,000 that needs to go to the insurance fund. And the way that's divvied up, you divvy it up between the funds who have employees. So that's going to be the general fund, the utility fund, the sanitation fund, and the airport fund. So even though we're showing an operating income of $975,000, the general fund's portion, if we follow the consultant's recommendation of transferring an extra $560,000 to the insurance fund to help it out for next year, even though it doesn't solve the issue yet, is going to be $425,000. So you can take $425,000 off that $975,000. Also, in the general fund, we have what's called an equipment replacement cost that is charged to mainly the police department and the fire department. And what that does, it basically depreciates the value of all the vehicles that they use, and we use that depreciation amount as a dollar amount to transfer into our equipment replacement fund. So we're saving money to replace all these vehicles as they come due. For example, like right now in this budget and in prior budgets, the fire department's only transferring $100,000 to that fund every year. That needs to go up because y'all have seen the engine replacement cycle. We should be, if you don't want to finance a dime of that $22 million in the next, whatever it was, 20-something years, you need to start saving money for it. Obviously, we're not going to be able to do the whole $22 million, but we need to put a bigger dent in what we have to finance. So I would at least add at least another $100,000 just for the fire department's budget. So we're looking at $425 for health and maybe another $100 for the fire department to help, defray some of the interest costs we're going to have on financing some of these fire engines going forward. And I know that's another question that's going to come up later, so I just wanted to put that piece in there too. So So even though this is a preliminary budget, there's some things that are gonna change that you're gonna see when we meet again on whatever it was, August 14th or 18th, can't remember the date.
This is based on what, a zero, based on a 2-cent tax rate increase? Okay, perfect.
Roughly 2 cents. I don't know what the final value is gonna be, I'm estimating, but, right,
So you're basing that on the voter approval rate.
correct,
So that's what we've got here.
correct. So if-
Assuming, with all the assumptions that we don't know the real CAD numbers and all of that.
Correct. So that's really all I had for the general fund, unless y'all had any other questions.
We better go on to number 3.
Okay.
Well,
we'll
t-
get through.
so I don't see here about, our other reserves. Are we digging into reserves? Are we, over the past 3 years, have we, I don't remember if it's one of these, if it's on this question or not, but, I mean, cause to take a 1.2 million out of our reserves,
Well,
I know that's insurance reserves, but
no,
still,
but
that's
we had the highest, you also have to look at the trend. I guess year before last, or last year, I think we had the highest net, or the year before last, the highest total reserves ever in the insurance fund. So I think that's also why our consultants would say, okay, you don't go back and say, we're gonna go ahead and add all of it back. The hope is that once you get into another multi-year pattern, yeah, you add a little bit, but you don't necessarily have to bite that off all at one time. If you do look at our census, obviously, we have, and none of us are getting younger, but we do have what's our percent of employees that are eligible to retire right now?
25.
25% right now. So, that being said, this is an issue everywhere. I mean, you've got experienced folks that are, obviously, most are wearing more than one hat, and they like working here. That's kind of reflected in the bringing down the turnover rates. Plus, we've been able to build back some departments like PD that they were at 25% turnover at one point, and now they're almost full. And so I would also kind of caution, since 60% of all of our general fund costs are associated with first responders, that definitely when you start looking at insurance, that's another item, just like pay, that you want to keep that strong to stay competitive. I've worked at one place that we tried to sweeten the deal to the point where we actually added a gap plan, so there was no deductible to compete with other agencies that had higher pay. So, but we'll get, what are we looking at, Brittany, on the final timeline for insurance quote? Okay, yeah. So we're a couple weeks away, probably.
Y'all ready to get back to the PowerPoint?
Sure.
Okay, go ahead.
This was really helpful, and it'll be helpful to have it in our hands.
Okay. So question 3, back up so we can see the question. Are there any ways to increase income or reduce expenses? So we kind of went through this on July 7th workshop. We'll just up here for reiteration. Optimizing revenues, we talked about the utility rate study, sanitation rate study. Council just approved some contracts to audit our hotels and motels, and also some of our franchise providers, and sales tax. We also, council just approved a utility revenue billing audit. Like I said, we talked about the dispatch billing them for overtime. We're always trying to utilize grants when we can, switching to a grant management platform as well, and we're in the process of constantly reviewing our permit fees. And on the expense side, we talked about this before too. We're trying to recoup all the merchant fees. The city's absorbing all these fees for credit card use. It's a convenience fee to the customer. Working on the finalizing that to where those convenient fees are passed on to the customer instead of the city absorbing them. Again, we got GPS on our fleet vehicles to make sure our assets are being used properly, and it can track maintenance for us better. We've tightened our procurement policies and controls up. Again, we've talked a lot about this enterprise fleet management. We'll have a workshop on that in August for you. Doing technology gap analysis, as the city manager said, and Dennis can attest to, we were really behind on technology, especially when I got here, and making a lot of progress, but it costs money. So they're doing that gap analysis. Again, we're using hot funds to absorb overtime for qualified events. And then there's going to be a discussion, I think, later on that last bullet point.
And again, even looking at some of the OT related to the ISD as well. I don't know if we covered that in there. Plus, with regard to the airport, we're recommending the airport business plan to try to shore up the areas where we can make money, and also what next steps on the ALP in terms of what capital to fund. Are some things going to cost you more to maintain, or some going to actually create revenue generation?
Are we actually going to contract to have an airport business plan, or is
That is one of our near-term goals. We've had that discussion already with the Type B Corp. That's what once the funds are transferred, we would like to have that as one of the first things that they undertake.
So if that's it, I think number 4 is handing off to someone else.
Since they're such a big part of the budget, we thought we'd have them come up and answer the questions on the fire side.
I feel victimized. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Mike Brown, your fire chief. I'd like to take a moment to thank Todd for explaining our revenue generation so perfectly. It's much appreciated. And again, I'd like to thank our people for participating so heavily in that program, because it truly is a moneymaker for the city, or a money saver, however you want to look at that. So question 4, if medical aid and rescue response encompass a vast majority of emergency calls to the fire department, what can the city do to collaborate with the Nacogdoches Hospital District, neither reducing cost or generating income? And I have to say, that's an excellent question.
Well, thank you.
Truly, we spent some time drilling down on this. I don't have a great answer for you. I'll get to my thoughts, but it's an interesting concept. So some realities that we're dealing with. Hospital is a separate taxing entity, of course. It runs transport, bills patients, collects Medicaid, supplemental program payments, etc. That revenue solely goes to the district. We first respond to basically every emergency medical call within the city limits. We don't transport, except in very, very rare extreme circumstances where an ambulance is not available. We can perform life-saving transportation, etc. As such, we can't bill. The government does not allow us to bill for that transport capacity or even that response capacity. There's a pilot program that was tried once through the federal government, phased out very quickly. Don't have a lot of details on that, but it failed and the government took it back off the table. So kind of a point of principle, direct billing is possible for a fire department in certain situations. For example, we bill for hazmat responses. If we're utilizing chemicals, if we ruin equipment in those responses, we are able to bill for those. However, that goes to the party at cause and to their insurance, which is a little different than a patient. It's not a resident whose emergency medical event we're responding to. So billing our own residents is a slippery slope. It's kind of a double recovery. You think about it, they're paying county taxes for the hospital district for EMS. They're also paying city taxes, of course, for the services we provide. So a direct bill would kind of give them a third charge for that same emergency. And so the law is not really in favor of that. It's a little gray, honestly. But I think the reception from our citizens for that would not be very welcoming, just as a caveat.
You mean for us not to go to a sick call?
For us to bill for that.
Okay.
I think that would be very ill received by our city citizens if we were billing for the medical response.
Well, the reason I ask this question is not to get an answer tonight, but I really believe, I mean, so many cities now either subcontract for part of it or have a piece of it, and now instead of us billing, there are contractors who bill, and that's all they do is bill. And we're going out on all of these. And either maybe we should cut back and not go out. I had probably 4 calls when, in the race, not including people close to me, but also people who are not close to me, about a fire engine going out when somebody busted their kneecap, and we couldn't do anything anyway over on one of the runs. And it's like, why are we having a fire engine, go out to this?
That's a valid point. The reason that we do respond is there are more of us,
Right.
more stations, more of us on duty every day.
And you're there. Yeah.
And it's really the critical calls. And so often those relatively minimal calls turn into the critical calls. Minutes count, not denigrating the ambulance service whatsoever, but if we get there faster, then we're able to potentially provide life-saving interventions.
Well, my request is that because so many cities now have a collaborative agreement and they don't go out, and there are now mechanisms to do the billing, both to bill insurance and to bill, that we really look into it very, very carefully. And particularly now would be an excellent time to look into it because, the hospital district still has that function, and to at least, because they're incurring all the costs and we're incurring all these costs.
The only thing I'll throw out, which Mike will and Jerry probably get upset with me on, is if we even had an intergovernmental agreement to deliver inside the city limits, the EMS service would be, again, then he's like, hey, wait a minute, I need another bay in each of those fire stations and boxes. And then if the district, and obviously we'd need some other revenue source to be able to cover that, but it would probably, I guess the nature of the call, some calls you'd probably send both anyway. Right,
So-
Mike? You'd some that would be clearly, this is just medical, you'd send the box out of that station.
So I don't want to go into this right now, but I have a list of like 15 cities who do it and how much money and an estimate that it could possibly bring in $500,000 to $1 million. I don't know if this is accurate or not. I'm just asking us to look into it seriously.
An option that did occur to us, given our legal constraints, and I truly would love to have this conversation with the district. It might be more appropriate for council to have that, district to council, is an interlocal agreement where the district actually compensates us for that first tier response.
Right,
Where
those options, right?
spitballing here, but that first initial response, understanding we don't transport, but the district actually pays us cost or a portion of the cost for that response, for that first tier response. No idea if the district would be open to that concept, but that's something that jumped out to us.
So when I was researching it, there are like 3 different levels of doing it. And one is subcontracting to do, part of the service and not do the transport, but do some other pieces of it. And other ones were they pay for the materials, the stuff to do the transport, and we transport since we're already out there.
Basically, that
There are a lot of
offsets some of the
different
costs
models.
for the services that we are providing,
Right.
for our citizens.
Are you usually there first, Mike?
I would say anecdotally most of the time, yes, sir.
So I can also say anecdotally, I was on an engine one day and we got a Med-Assist call. We were down here and we were there about 6 or 7 minutes faster.
Sure.
And that's because of proximity.
Right.
Downtown is a whole lot closer to North Street, to the library, than it is to Durst. That's just the reality, and we're making those calls faster. So I think if there's a possibility for us to work together on this, we need to do that.
Right.
And I I can't speak for the entire council, but I know I speak for me when I say if there's a way for us to collaboratively do this where we get to people faster and they get better service and life-saving care if they need it, shouldn't that be our goal for everyone?
Absolutely.
You just need to get paid for it.
Yeah, I mean, but there are mechanisms to do it.
I know.
So, if
That are
that, I'm
given
just
to us.
asking you to look into it. That's all
Absolutely.
I'm asking
No,
you
in fact,
to do.
it-
Because it's very complicated.
I mean it. That was an excellent question, and
Thank you.
something definitely to think about and to explore further. Any other questions on that subject?
Thank you, though.
You're on to the next, you got the next one too.
Okay. Question 5, are there more affordable alternatives to the $1 million fire engines we are proposing to replace over the next 10 years? What are the implications of using different vehicles? What percent of Nacogdoches Fire Department emergency response calls were for fires in 2025? So I'd love to do the long story short, but I'm gonna have to give you a kind of long story on this one. So our apparatus program is designed with, believe it or not, affordability and a long service life. Replacing apparatus with, thank you, I keep forgetting to do that, thank you very much. Replacing apparatus with smaller, lesser capable vehicles will actually end up costing us or costing our citizens further. It's driven primarily by insurance rates. ISO and their PPC, Public Protection Classification, requires a fully manned pumper, fully equipped pumper, our big trucks, to be within either 1.5 road miles of ideally every property in the city, or 4 minutes of travel time. Most cities don't achieve that. Like us, they balance that response and they do the very best they can. We have a good coverage of that. It's not perfect. I think the cities that do maximize that are some of the ones that would jump out to you as the most affluent, because they're able to hire more firefighters, have more fire stations, more fire trucks. We do an excellent job, if I do say so myself, and have historically. I can't take credit for that, in that response model. So if we did downsize and we weren't running that frontline pumper, that's where ISO would look at that as a lack of coverage. That affects our ISO rating, can drive it down. I will try to make this a little bit shorter for you. This is an example. These are numbers that are estimates based on a $200,000 home. This fire protection premium is the portion of home insurance that is the fire protection premium, and it's not the entirety of the home insurance. Showing a baseline. We're currently at class 2, and if we drop down to an unprotected consideration, which really kicks us into potentially a class 8, class 6 to 8. 8 is where the big drops come in. Then you're looking at the increase in their homeowner's insurance every year that would be associated with that reduction of coverage. Additionally, there's some true political landmines if we decided to do that, because which districts, which wards, which homes are we going to deprioritize? And that's not what we owe our citizens. Circling back to the trucks and the costs, trucks are expensive, and we make no bones about that. What we do is we do purchase mid-tier pumpers. We emphasize heavy-duty components, high quality, but we don't do any of the cosmetic bells and whistles, the luxury items that are excellent. Our last fire engine was $950,000. The top-end engines run $1.6 to $2 million these days. We purchase only through cooperative purchasing contracts, Fly Board, HGAC, Sourcewell, for competitive pricing. We maximize the life of our engines. We're moving to an operational pattern. We haven't historically done it. Moving to an operational pattern of frontline service for a pumper of 15 years, 5 years of reserve. That is in line with the maximum recommended time from the National Fire Protection Association. Going back to ISO, you can actually start losing credit as well in their grading system if your engines become too old. on a practical standpoint, once they get to that age, parts availability, if nothing else, becomes extraordinarily problematic. Downtime's increasing because it's old and it's going to break down more often, but we struggle.
How many pumpers do we have?
We have 5 currently. We have 5 frontline and 2 reserve. Once we complete our station projects, we will be downsizing that. We are currently operating a rescue, a dedicated heavy rescue that does most of our primary rescue response. That apparatus will completely go away out of our fleet, never to be replaced again. That is the most commonly replaced apparatus, big heavy apparatus in our fleet. That normally lasts about 7 years. That will be going away, so we'll be able to downsize our fleet a bit.
So we're gonna be asking for $1 million fire truck, right?
Yes,
I mean,
ma'am.
that's in there, okay. And since I've been on the council, we've already bought another $1 million fire truck. That doesn't sound like it's 15 years.
Sadly, 2 of our trucks are exactly the same age. And so those are 07 models, I believe. Or no, the outgoing engine is a 97. So we pushed that one very, very far. The next engine that will be due for replacement is a 2002.
So we'd be asking for another one next year too.
So 3% of our calls are for fire, right?
6.6%. Yep, 6.6%.
Is it? Okay, I thought it was 3 to 4% the last year.
Ran the numbers upon receipt of the question. According to our records, it's 6.6.
Look at it again.
She don't believe you.
No, because, I mean, I got some numbers from last year. But anyway, maybe they're not, maybe you have numbers that weren't published or something too, so. So whatever, if that's, and we really need these fire trucks, do we need, is it more for the insurance for our people, or is it for, I'm confused.
The response time, the ISO rating, all of it factors in. This is not atypical with a full-time fire service. And even when you have large volunteer fire services, such as League City, the only reason they can operate that way is because, one, they've got a pretty good amount of money, and most of their, let's say, over half of their folks on their books are actually full-time Houston firefighters, because that's where they live.
Chief, sorry, Rick. What all is on the trucks? It's not just to fight fires, right?
That's correct. And especially when we move to the new model that I spoke of, rather than having that dedicated rescue truck, each pumper will be fully equipped to respond to medical calls.
Jaws of life, stuff
Yep.
like that.
High angle rescue, low angle rescue. That's ropes and pulleys for high angle or low rescue. NFPA and ISO both stipulate how much equipment we have to have, how many ladders, how many feet of hose, various diameters. Those trucks are fully equipped. Basically, it's a one-stop shop. That's the model we're moving to. Less specialized apparatus, but fully equipped, so that each individual apparatus can respond in that initial response. Because remember, when we have a fire, for example, we're all coming. We have to because of our numbers. They're able to immediately begin helping on that incident.
So on that, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
On that 4 to 6%, either one,
Sure.
whichever one is the correct number, everyone's going.
Correct.
And you need every truck to be able to respond to a structure fire, right?
That's correct.
Well,
Yes, sir.
I don't think that percentage is all structure fires, right?
No, it's probably not. It's inclusive of a specific category that's required by
that's
federal
probably-
reporting.
That's probably what the difference is.
Very possibly.
So when you say a model, this, a leaner fleet is coming in place of a dedicated heavy rescue apparatus, does that mean smaller?
No, we would be taking that completely out of our fleet, never buying it again. That station currently runs one crew, one company, but houses an engine and houses a heavy rescue. We will be moving away from that model.
Well, that's why I'm asking. You're sort of answering that question about, do we have to have the larger apparatus all the time? it says here you're moving toward a different leaner model. I don't know
Just
what that.
from a fleet size standpoint, and doing away with the large apparatus that we replace most frequently.
Did the ISO change when you closed the station out on Main Street, East Main Street? Because originally in the bond, everybody was saying, oh, if we move it so far, it's gonna raise your insurance rates. But now we have moved it or are going to move it, and we're closing one of those stations. Did that change the ISO in the distance?
No, sir. What
And
we've
the
done
response
is
time?
in our planning, we've very carefully mapped out where the new stations are going, and to ensure that we are not reducing or increasing, I guess, response time in those districts.
So for the east side of town, it's not gonna increase response time?
No, sir.
Okay. cool.
Not substantively.
No,
There,
what does that mean?
there are certain areas that will have an increased response time.
What does not substantially mean?
There are
Like
certain
an
areas,
extra minute,
as
or-
we balance and move the stations around, again, we can't provide 100% perfect coverage anywhere.
Like, how far will it be from the new station down here at the soccer field to the farthest place on the east side of the town? Will that be farther than the normal ISO?
Well, let me jump in. You've got the downtown station, and then you've got the east station. You're pretty much splitting the difference where you're landing that new larger station, and you will have you'll host more vehicles at that one than the other stations, correct?
Correct.
So that's another piece to remember. That's why it's the central. I guess that's really your grand station at that point. So I don't know if that helps the capacity out of the new station near the
It
soccer
doesn't make
fields.
the trucks faster or
No,
shorten the
but
distance.
they're gonna use so you're gonna have trucks, you might have trucks in both cases, either leaving here or leaving the other station, they're gonna use the university potentially. So that'll be closer in both cases. It would all, I understand what Mike's trying to say. I think what he's saying is it should average out, cause it's basically you're building one bigger consolidated station halfway in between.
Plus relocating to the other stations. That makes a huge difference.
And our reality is that there are places that have reduced response times based on where we're currently stationed.
Okay, now, wait a minute, hang on. Are we on the budget, or are we just talking now? 'Cause
We're just talking, I'm
Okay.
talking, just
All right.
talking.
Let's get back on the budget. These are question and answers for the budget, and because we're just talking about stuff that's already happened, please.
So in that vein, we do aggressively pursue grants. We've been historically fairly successful in that. We currently operate one Type 1 engine. That's our big pumper. That was matching grant funded. 2 wildland engines, one big, one small. One's pickup based basically, and one's one of the big ones. Additionally, we have another Type 3, which is one of the big ones, should be delivered next year. Some of those are matching grants, some of those are zero cost to the city whatsoever. And again, we have applied, the Assistance to Firefighter Grant Program has been closed for 2 years, and that is now open. So we were able to apply again to that, and we put in for a bumper. And so we don't know if we'll get it, but we have been successful with that in the past, and if we do, then we'll certainly make Todd happy. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Yes.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Mayor, Council, Jessica Sal, Community Services Director. Yeah, come on, Ashley. We're gonna do this together.
Hi, Mayor and Council. Ashley Morgan, Executive Director of the Nacogdoches CVB.
So we're gonna tag team this a bit because the question that was submitted is about shifting employee hours to accommodate Sunday openings at our city-run historic sites, the possible use of volunteers, and then also increase in sales and our hot tax revenue if those things were done. And since Ashley deals a lot with our visitor trends, we both deal with hot taxes, we figured we'd kind of do this together. So Kevin, does this work? Okay, perfect, I'll handle it. So to give you a bit of background, before we delve into shifting hours, wanted to give a little refresher on how we currently operate our city's historic sites. We have 4 historic sites that are listed on the screen for you. The Durst Taylor House, the Stern Huey Museum, the Zion Hill Church, and the Railroad Depot. We operate those museums currently Wednesday through Saturday from 10 to 4. We have 4 part-time staff who work 80 hours a week, or who work a cumulative 80 hours a week. They're 20 hours a week per intern, so that way we don't go over, turn them into full-time employees, which come with benefits. So they're all capped at 20 hours per week. So with our standard week, that Wednesday through Saturday, we are open to the public 90 hours. That equates to about 101 hours of staff time, because they do get there a little early, so that way we can open the museum, check the messages, do the standard opening procedures, and then also closing procedures at the end of the day. And so the question was posed about shifting, I believe at the last council meeting, about shifting our hours from a Wednesday through Saturday to something that would accommodate for Sunday. So the base answer is things like that can be done, but there are some significant impacts and trade-offs that I'd like to walk through today, and then we can also talk about some of our visitor trends. And I will mention that this Wednesday through Saturday schedule is somewhat new within the past 2 or 3 years. Before that, all of our museums were open Tuesday through Saturday when SFA staffed the Railroad Depot for us. They used primarily students, and then about 2 years ago, they said we don't have enough students to run this, so they turned it back over to us for staffing. In order to do that, we had to cut Tuesday off of 2 of our museum days, or 2 of our museum sites, in order to accommodate opening our 3rd site, and since that time, we've also added the Zion Hill Church that we open and maintain. So this Wednesday through Saturday is a little new, and so now we are considering the idea of that Thursday through Sunday. So in reviewing this, Veronica Amar, our Historic Sites Manager, looked at some of our other Nacogdoches museums, which are kind of our cohorts and our comparables in town. As of right now in Nacogdoches, only 2 museums are currently open on Sundays. That is the Stone Fort Museum and the Cole Art Center, which are open 12 to 5 and then 1 to 5. They are both staffed by SFA staff who are paid. And then, of course, the CUB is also open and has exhibits in there as well. So we were looking at kind of what our other museums in Nacogdoches are doing. If we move to this Thursday through Sunday model, there is going to be some impact on our visitor numbers, we believe. We would have some reduced availability for our field trips. Since 2008, we've had about 30% of our field trips, either from schools or large groups that come in from out of town, have come on those Wednesdays. We don't see a lot of school tours on Thursdays and Fridays. I think by that point, the kiddos are burnt out and the teachers don't want to have to take them out of classes on Friday and then try to wrangle them back in. So if we reduce our staffing and don't have staff there on Wednesdays, we would have to rely on our full-time staff to be pulled off of other administrative duties, whether it's working on grants or exhibits or budgeting, and then go give tours. Also, the Sunday doesn't necessarily align with some of the other museums in East Texas. We did a survey, and out of about 57 museums that we looked at, 80% are open on Wednesdays, but only 25% are open on Sundays. So, of course, we know every museum's different. There's not a lot of city-run historic sites in Texas in general, and especially in East Texas. A lot of them are 501c3s, volunteer organizations, privately owned, so you can't always compare all museums, but this is what we saw as far as the hours. And then on the back end, as far as the staff consideration, some of our staff concerns is that if we switch to a Thursday through Sunday model to allow for some Sunday hours, there's a potential we could lose our current staff. Right now we are staffed with almost completely college kids. That's not the rule, but that tends to be who applies for our part-time jobs. Many of them have secondary jobs and also attend classes Monday through Friday. Right now, we already tell them during interviews, you will have to work every single Saturday. I think sometimes they think we're joking in the interviews, and then when we go to offer them the positions, I will share the last time Veronica offered a part-time position, we offered it to 3 different people, and once we told them, we are serious, it's every Sunday or every Saturday, they then declined the job. So we had to re-interview again and got a 4th person. So I think there will be some impacts on existing staff and then possibly some difficulty recruiting some of those students if we tell them they have to work every single Saturday and Sunday. And then Ashley's going to talk a bit about some of what she sees at the visitor center every day.
Hi. So we keep track of visitors through a really sophisticated system of doing a little hash mark every time they come in. And just so everybody knows, we are open 7 days a week. Monday through Friday, we are open and staffed by our full-time staff members. Saturday and Sunday are volunteers. However, I will say close to 50% of the time, Mike Bay ends up coming up to the visitor center anyways to work, and that's either to cover a volunteer shift that was unfilled or last minute canceled, or also just because he really loves the place. But we are, as you can see by this graph, which is accumulation of data from January 2024 to it says 2026. It's actually July 2026 as of last week when we put this together. You can see Saturday is by far our busiest day. I don't really think that's a surprise to anyone, but you can see the other days are pretty much evenly split with the exception of Friday, and then Sunday is our quietest day. So this is across the board. Even after the Blueberry Festival, we see extremely quiet numbers on Sunday. Now, this is kind of what I call like a cat and mouse effect. So because there's not a lot else open on Sundays, then we do suffer from that as well, just as a culture. And, you know, if we wanted to change the culture of Nacogdoches to be open on Sundays, that would take I would say a citywide effort, and not just historic sites, but also downtown businesses. And we all know that our downtown businesses, like our mayor, are operated by small families who deserve a day off too, especially when they work Saturday until 5 or 6 p.m. And so it's kind of, like I said, a cultural shift that we would all have to adopt as a city to change that. And then also we have primarily 2 types of visitors. Of course, there's more than that, but these are our bread and butter retirees, or mostly because of heritage travel and tourism. They're interested in history. They're unique in that they tend to check in on Mondays and Tuesdays. I can't tell y'all how many times we've had visitors come in on Mondays and Tuesdays, and we have to deliver the news. I'm sorry, there's nothing open beyond the visitor center and Millard's Crossing, which is amazing, but nothing else beyond that. And even the downtown businesses are closed. We, of course, send them to our gardens and free things around town, but it's also like 100 degrees and 70% humidity, and that's can only go so far. And so we really struggle with Mondays and Tuesdays. And then families, and I'm speaking about people my age and people, working families, they are traveling Friday through Sunday. And so just this past weekend, I was in Broken Bow, and I noticed how easy it was to get to an attraction on Sunday. And they said, oh yeah, everybody packs up and goes home on Sunday. Not saying we're the same kind of attraction or destination as Broken Bow, but that was a real-time experience that I had, and it's something that we experience as well in the visitor center, just slower traffic because people are going home. And so our personal, and this is a discussion that we had with our entire staff, Mike Bay, Natalie Dunn, and Lauren Pennington all weighed in. We personally feel that shifting hours from Wednesday to Saturday to Thursday to Sunday would be detrimental to us. It would have a negative impact on the visitor center experience, or on the visitor experience, especially combined with businesses being closed early on in the week. If we had our dream and enough funding, we would love for the historic sites to be open every day of the week, just like we are. But unfortunately, we know that that's not feasible currently. And so our recommendation is to keep the hours the same.
Let me say something, especially in retail. Until you have a population in this town of around 60, 70, 80,000, you're wasting your time and your money on Sunday. It's not going to happen, period, unless you have a population that would potentially come to your business or a historic site. It's not going to happen, period. So.
It's not to say we won't get there. I think that
we will, but I may be dead when we do.
But I think that we are heading in the direction of having more visitors, more population, just with the trends of SFA's growth and Nacogdoches' growth and even tourism growth. I mean, our hotel occupancy has gone up and up in the past few years. We haven't experienced a decline since COVID, really. And so I think we're heading in that direction. I just don't know if we're there just yet, funding-wise.
And you're right about Saturday. That's the hardest day you could get for anybody to work, and the owner has to work on Saturday because you don't have any help. Nobody wants to work on Saturday. It's their day off. So I totally agree with you.
Question on the visitor center data. Do you find that this average is consistent in the summer versus fall versus spring? Is it fairly similar if we were to break it out by month?
No. So we have a heavy peak in the spring and a heavy peak in the fall, a heavy lull in the summer and in the winter. And it's just weather, seasonal. It's around events. I will say, Saturday is skewed a bit on this just because so many of our events are on Saturday. And like I said, our very sophisticated hash model is, the volunteers or the staff tried to get as many people that are coming in the visitor center, but on days like the Blueberry Festival, the Old Town Rig Down, and Wine Swirl, we can't keep up with the amount of people that are coming into the visitor center. So I did try to kind of mitigate that by making all of those events just the same number, just to show this graph, because for the rest of the year, the Saturday average is, I would say, taking out all of the large events, Saturday average is closer to 40 or 50.
You're saying not 3 times as much?
Yes, exactly. And so, Saturdays are still by far our busiest days, but event seasons definitely skew that data. And it's just because most of our events are on Saturdays.
It seems like we could come up with a more sophisticated way. Maybe that is a good use of hotel tax.
We are. We also get the cell phone data through Placer AI. So I did run some of those numbers as well for the historic sites and for the visitor center. The problem is the radius will sometimes pick up traffic. For instance, the Durst Taylor historic site, with it being on North Street, it'll pick up traffic from people driving by, and we can't count those as visitors because they're not actually going into the Durst Taylor. So basically, that data does not match like what their data says for people actually coming in.
But we do have that data for those specific sites too, right?
Yes, for the historic sites department, we have a sign-in book when people come in that we ask how many people are with them, whether they're adults, children, and then what zip code they come from. Vast majority of people will sign in. Sometimes people don't want to give us their zip code that I'm going to mail them something, which we don't, because we don't get their full mailing address. But we do track that information. And then we use Ashley's great data, because the Placer AI data is wonderful, as long as you know how to read it and know that there's going to be some outliers, like people, one we talked about, like some of the visitor center data when Dolly's was open. It's like, okay, well, there's a lot of people that are milling around waiting on Dolly's to have breakfast, but maybe they're not going inside a downtown business. So the data is great, but we do keep visitor stats for all of the museums.
One last question, I promise I'll stop. Are we currently operating all 4 historic sites?
Yes, sir. We are operating the 4 city-run historic sites, and then Ashley staff operates the Convention and Visitors Bureau.
Okay, thank you.
Would there be any value in staggering employment where one Sunday a month an employee works, even if it was just one museum open? That would be part of the job description. You work one Sunday a month or something?
Yeah, and I think Jessica is going to go over this. They do that currently on some major weekends, like Blueberry Festival weekend. And y'all did another one.
So, yes, we do some Sunday openings. Usually they're event driven. So like we have the Loblolly model train display at the Railroad Depot. By far our biggest event we have anywhere. It's wonderful. Thank goodness we have George who sets everything up for us. So for those dates, he's open on Sunday. When he first started this exhibit, he staffed it all by himself. It's gotten so big that now we always have staff there with him. We've also opened at the Zion Hill Church for different events, concerts, when we partner with Friends of Historic Nacogdoches and on different things. So we have done Sunday openings when they're event driven. We don't have a standing Sunday. We are open. We could look at that with our current staffing. We may be able to implement some of those standing Sundays, but I will say with how lean our staff is, even last week we had one part-timer that was on vacation, which was planned. Someone else got sick and we had to close a museum for the day. So I think looking at things like that, we can, if we have some additional staffing that goes into it.
Okay, so I've got several questions. First of all, on these field trips, out-of-town field trips, do they spend the night, or do they mostly just drive through and then they're gonna go see another one, or do we know? Do we have an answer for that?
I would say, and some of this is anecdotally, I'm happy
That's
to
right.
kind of look at those. Majority of the school tours are day tours. They are driving in. We've had some from Texarkana, Houston, Livingston, that area. They drive in early. They visit several sites, usually have lunch, sometimes at a park, sometimes they go to a restaurant and then drive home. We do have some tour groups that have come up from Houston that are retirees, that have driven up for the day, visited, stayed the night, done a few things the next day, and then go back home. So
Do we
it's
charge
kind of a
them
mix.
anything?
We do not. The museums all take donations, but we do not charge them.
So a tour theoretically could come in, staff, we have to staff over at the OUB, and sometimes pay a docent, and it's all free to all of them. And basically, the city's maybe getting one meal or something. That's something I think we need to really think about, having some kind of charge. I don't know if we want to charge schools from Texarkana, but I mean, we are providing a service to them and denying some services to our own people who live here, you know, because of the cost of it. So that's one thing. I'm surprised at how many people from out of town we just give all of our things to. I mean, it's good to bring them in, but I really do think we need to. One of my favorite quotes is, "An idea is a terrible thing if it's the only one you have." And I think right now we're just thinking about taking our own staff every Sunday, what it would take to have all of our sites open on Sunday. So I'm asking you to rethink this. First of all, because a lot of museums do have some kind of supplemental volunteers for different days to cover a day, to have some open on Sunday. Right now, we are the oldest town in Texas, and we don't have a full view of our history. We are not accommodating to people who want to see the range of our history. So, and I'm following up on Brad's, you know, we might want to have the first Sunday have this side open, the second Sunday maybe never have Durst Taylor open if nobody really comes. I don't know what how many people actually come to all these sites. Maybe have it only open when it's the syrup making or something,
The Sugarcane Festival.
So really think through creatively. That's what I'm asking you to do. I was not asking for all of a sudden to come in, yes, no, we're not going to do it, yes, we are going to do it, but to think creatively about how to do it, because there is nothing for people to do on Sundays, and they keep complaining. And also the residents, the history is very important
Can
to
I throw
many
out
of the residents. Yes,
one
sir.
other thing? And we'll be coming to y'all with the solicitation. We had the RFP for the Festival Park event venue, music venue type, mini Woodlands Amphitheater. And then also what demand there would be for a downtown boutique hotel. They've got some good proposals, and I think does it look like the next council meeting or two council meetings from now?
Eventually, we need to get together to.
Yeah, so
meet them.
we've got those proposals. I think we'll be able to glean some things from that process because, yes, there were more things to do here probably in the 70s and 80s than there is now in some ways. So that'll give us an idea on latent demand of, let's say, where there are other attractors that might be drawing people for even a 1-day, 2-day visit, and how we can kind of dovetail off of that and build a multi-day experience. Having, I don't know if that's good or bad, but having been in Kemah and Galveston and places like that where you have, you'll have a tourist element, a visitor element, and a historic element all wrapped into one. I think the best thing we can do is try to make it an enjoyable experience, try to get people to spend multiple days here. And I know they're working with what they have, and hopefully the downtown businesses can also respond in kind. I mean, like right now, even Roma's is not open on Mondays, as an example. And I do think that once more of the buildings are at higher and best use, which was the other part of our downtown study. So the garage is a piece, the highest and best use of the buildings, and more programmed things to do. Even if the historic venues are not primary, I think that they will benefit from that if we can get a more consistent visitation, especially even during those dip months, because I think those are the ones we're really gonna have to target, is what can we do to bring people here in enough numbers that it's gonna benefit the businesses as well, and the experience here, because we do have, and that's what that study will show too, is gonna be where is your space to host others, not have a concert of 5,000 people at the same time you have a football game at SFA, those type of things.
Well, people don't stay on Sunday. They're not here on Sunday because there's nothing to do. And that's over and over and over. So really, I mean, there are a whole lot of things you can look through, a whole lot of ways to think about how to do this. And it may not be all 4 sites open every Sunday. It may not be, but there are ways to, I think, do better with our historic sites. And if we have to have one of them that's only open occasionally, if we don't have any business. I haven't seen your numbers, I haven't seen your sign in, but I'm asking you to rethink it, to at least have something to do. Even imagine what is there, and this is income for the city. This is why I'm asking this in a budget meeting, because it's, and if we need to do something through hotel tax money to handle this, what could we do creatively? So even if you imagine what is your perfect weekend in Nacogdoches, does it end at 4 o'clock on Saturday? I hope not, or Saturday night, but I mean, what is there?
Yeah.
So thank you for looking into it further. And I can give you more information because I've done more research and asked a bunch more questions if you want some, but I do appreciate everything you do. I think sometimes our tendency is to only think of what we have, staffing, and there's a bigger world out there to draw from, and I'm hoping but okay, thank you.
We can absolutely look at that. Does anybody else have any other questions about this one? All right,
Thank you.
thank you so much.
Okay, we are halfway through these questions, so if we could get the questions answered as soon as possible, please.
Evening, Council. Mike New, Executive Director of Development and Infrastructure. Question 7, is infrastructure spending for this budget, excluding grants and bonds, increasing or decreasing compared to prior years? So this table we have here shows not only actual spend from prior years, but what we budgeted in those years. But look carefully at the budgeted column, because when the actual doesn't quite reach that budgeted amount, we do move that money forward. So when you see those increasing budgeted amounts, it's not new dollars. Sometimes that's dollars for existing projects that aren't completely finished. We continue to budget for those until they are complete. And that right-hand side, I've kind of highlighted some of the highlights of some of the changes that you see. We did initiate our revenue bond issuances. We did acquire more money specifically for doing more projects. You see that transition in that FY25 timeframe. And so that increases in our utility fund CIP. We've added more projects. Our lists are much longer in our CIP plan at this point, but that's triggered by a lot of needs that we've assessed, particularly in our wastewater treatment plant, our largest sewer interceptors. We brought those projects to you over the last 3 or 4 months. Those all have big dollar amounts attached to them. That's why you see that reflected in our utility fund CIP. In terms of general fund, we've done a lot of moving in the last couple of years, particularly in general fund CIP. We've taken items like our city hall renovations. We've pushed those to the out years. We've completed some projects. So some projects we have knocked out. We've knocked out a lot of park projects. We've knocked out our police department roof project. And other projects we've said, well, let's scratch those, or let's migrate those or absorb those within projects in other categories to minimize that impact on general fund CIP. We always have annual street rehab. So in this upcoming budget, in the current budget, we also have annual street rehab that's always reflected in general fund CIP. So we've maintained some consistency in terms of what we're budgeting for, but our actual spend has gone down because we've made a strategic effort to minimize impacts within the general fund. And we can stay on that for a minute.
Okay, yeah. So it looks to me, now, correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, I know we got bond money, particularly streets, drainage, all that. We got the bond money in, and it looks like we are spending less and just taking it out of bond money. But we have, and the question is because we have almost limitless needs. So it's not, so my question is, are we just robbing Peter to pay Paul? And
Maybe ask it a different way. I'm not sure what you're
okay,
asking.
so our expenditures, our actual expenditures have gone from fiscal year 23 from 2,169,000 to 93 million, which will probably be what, 130 million, or I don't know what it'll be actual at the end of the 26 year, but so it's gone way down what we're actually spending.
Well, I think you also got to look at the context of where we are in the CIP in terms of design. So I think, I don't know if, Mike, you need to talk about, we've talked about this with Case in some of the prior meetings as well, that we are in this, it's kind of like the fire stations as well, as an example. We are in this design, mass design stage, and then we're also, as you know, pursuing federal funds in some cases where we were not in the past, where the city wasn't historically in the past.
So are we mostly just relying on the bonds and contracts and now relying a lot less on our taxes or whatever, on our other income thing?
Yes, in terms of our CIP plan, what we're pulling from the general fund, our majority of our projects were planned pre-election, and the bond covered a lot of that cost. We've migrated to a bond category. We have other projects identified in the general fund CIP. Instead of moving those up, we've been moving them to out years. Some we've absorbed in other areas of our CIP planning. To give you an example, the maintenance, fire station maintenance. We've identified maintenance for certain stations. We're now planning, because of the bond election, to build new stations. So some of those costs that you might have seen in 2 or 3 years ago CIP plan, you're not going to see in the current plan. So yes, bond is covering a lot of those projects, but those are also one-time projects that won't be repeated year over year.
So I'm wondering about if we're actually using the bond money, which is not free money. I mean, it's borrowed money. It seems to me now we're actually borrowing to do infrastructure instead of adding more infrastructure. Does that make sense? Instead of completing more infrastructure projects, the bonds were supposed to be.
Well,
to
let
really
Todd
Thanks.
talk about the cash flow,
Help me
because
out here.
we're actually doing more projects, not less projects.
So the decrease of CIP in the general fund is by design. Most cities, unless you got cash cows and full sales tax, most cities do not fund CIP with reserves. You issue bonds and you go out for grants. The city here has a charter requirement where your operating income has to exceed your operating expenses. Your reserves can only be used for capital and CIP. That's by charter design, and it's a good charter requirement. But again, your reserves in most cities, most counties, most school districts, most ESDs, MUDs, everywhere, they use their reserves for capital, which is your autos, your tractors, your dump trucks, your lawnmowers. You don't use reserves for CIP because CIP is very expensive, and so you don't want to deplete your reserves on that. That's why you issue bonds, which the city did. So this is by design because we don't want to deplete our reserves on CIP to where we can't even afford a tractor anymore or a dump truck.
So the question is, if we have, let me see if I can ask this well. So if we have a regular budget and we are saying we really don't want to spend this on our streets or on drainage, on this big drainage project, because most cities they actually go get a bond to put it, so we're taking our current budget and we're saying we're gonna take that money out of our current budget and then borrow on it over time. Then, to me, we're actually, in the hole. I mean, because we're borrowing to do this, the stuff that we before didn't borrow, we
But
only
you-
recently.
It's like
had.
buying a house. You can't buy a house without a mortgage.
Well, right, yeah, but what are we doing with the rest of the
But let
money?
me- let me
The
say
rest of
something.
the money,
We don't
we're
have
spending on capital. We're spending on all of our fleet vehicles, our lawnmowers, our tractors, our
Yeah,
dump
our
trucks.
regular expenses.
We don't have
Those
a
are
normal.
capital items. They're not operating
So let me
expenses.
let me clarify something. The reason y'all had cash reserves of any consequence and you didn't have the debt is because you weren't doing capital projects that were long-standing.
Or maintenance.
Now, if you look, when we bring the fleet discussion, the average age of our non-heavy-duty fleet is 13.3 years. That's the average. We have, I don't know how many generations back Tahoes. I still wish we had a Crown Vic I could drive around in. But, so, again, you have to look proportionately. Vehicles, your O&M on those vehicles, the electronics on them, even though we have some that probably predate electronics, all of that has went up exponentially. We're going to be bringing you some options to modernize the fleet through a capital lease program. It may not take on everything all at once, but that's one side of it. Now, could you have cash flowed some of these things in the past? Yes, you probably could have cash flowed more in the past, back when things were cheaper, but I think we've got enough evidence that most of it was fix it as it came. A lot of cities were like that. Galveston was like that forever. Actually, most of Galveston's more modern work was done post Hurricane Ike with grant funds. Actually, even rebuilding their sewer plant, a lot of their drainage projects that are ongoing right now, they did not have the capital. They did not have the reserve capacity to do those projects otherwise. So now we're, one other caveat too, yes, we're 60% of our budget is first response. If you move into other cities like that are more fragile, Galveston's like 80, 85, if I use that as a comparison. That's just your first response side. So there's almost no way to cash flow anything. Now go ahead.
All I was gonna say is, so I'm concerned that we're borrowing more, and maybe we need to be thinking about, tightening our belts in some ways.
Well,
or unless we think we're gonna win the lottery in 10
well,
years.
let
when
me
these
say this: the
other
prior
CIP
prior
projects are
approach was also premised, I believe, the prior approach was not sustainable for your infrastructure.
It may not, but I'm
It
talking
was
about
not sustainable,
today.
and you have to have people, staff-wise, to move things forward, to get projects done. Again, the majority of the staffing is our first responders. And so, I mean, this is not the first time, having addressed the infrastructure need versus the staffing need. And yes, we're doing it in a leaner way. That's what Leander was as well. I think we had, 75 non-first responders on staff out of a city of 100,000 people. So what I'm trying to say is you can look at other examples throughout the state, either COs or bonds, on major capital items. There really isn't another way to cash flow it because, as Todd has mentioned, you have other, I guess, depreciating capital items you also have to spend on along the way. Does it seem easier in some ways if you're in a brand new suburb? It does in the front end, but it doesn't later, 40, 50 years later when everything starts aging. And they have to do the same thing. They have to take out bonds. It's not unheard of that some of the larger cities that suburban ones around Texas, Houston, Austin, Dallas, they'll have $300 million sitting out there on bond projects just related to all their capital infrastructure.
So,
And
can I, just for a second?
sure.
So we have a few options here, right? If we want to spend more on infrastructure, we can either cut what we have budgeted, of which a significant portion is staff, right? 60% is in fire and police, or we can raise revenue. So we either have to pick what we're not going to pay, what we're not going to do, or we've got to raise revenue. Those are our only options. Or we go out for more bonds, which again is raising more revenue. But the fact remains is that we have done more in our CIP plan over the last 3 years than had been done, what, in the previous decade?
Well, I hate to say this, I know that we've got overlap with several people, but it's probably at least the last decade. But the other thing we're being cognizant of, and we will get to this deeper in the presentation, is we're cognizant of the total tax rate, and it's not just us, the other taxing entities as well. We're also cognizant of going after grant funds and the public-private partnerships. In some ways, even maybe potentially the philanthropic public-private partnerships where we're more of the recipient rather than a partner. And we're trying to do that all in real time and pursue the existing bond projects. But before we wrap up, I think on some of the last slides, we will talk about, are there some outstanding things that we haven't issued bonds on yet? Is the total tax rate getting too high across all taxing entities? We can't really plan around what the county, and so you've got the jail bond. You now have the hospital district has added to it. So, and at the same time, the state, that's why the legislative session is so important. If they take another whack on exemptions, then again, it depends on how deep they cut.
Look, let me say one thing. This is not a normal budget because we don't have all of our sales tax. And I'll be dang if I'm going to give up our staff at Nacogdoches Hospital District's benefit. I'm not going to do it. We worked too hard to come to where we are right now, And like I said, this isn't a normal budget. We're missing a third of our revenue, period, dot.
One other thing
And I'm not going to give up our staff, at their expense.
Sure.
We've done that with county. We've done it. We've been the stepping boy of everybody in here. We've picked up the bill for everybody. It's unsustainable.
Utility fund revenue bonds are backed by rates. General fund bonds and general fund CIP projects are backed by tax revenue. The longer, and this is a factor too in why we would choose, or at least propose and council approve to finance projects as opposed to paying as we go. The longer we wait, and this is the danger of deferred maintenance, the longer we wait, the greater that failure cost. If you let a sewer line or a sewer interceptor completely fail, it then has to be fixed. Whether you've got money there or not, something has to happen to fix it. If you've maintained that preventative maintenance cycle, if you've maintained that cycle of keeping infrastructure in place, keeping infrastructure upgraded to the point where it's now serving new opportunities, not just fixing old opportunities, you do that over time. It's the whole purpose of capital improvement planning. You reduce that cost over time. But if you continue to defer projects that really need to be addressed now, and that's what financing provides, it allows them to be addressed now, that cost can increase exponentially. And what was 2 years ago a $500,000 project, maybe today is a $1.5 million project. And there's so many factors involved in that.
You will have no argument with me on any of that. I just want to make sure that whatever budget, first of all, I want to say, I don't like politics. I have been in politics long enough to know that when you all are gone, the next group will blame you all. So it doesn't make any difference who we blame. We're in this spot right now, and we need to make the best decisions that we can make right now. And I think questions help to make sure that we have the best decisions, and also we can answer to our constituents about it. I just want to make sure we have a sustainable budget, and it's, and if we have to cut things, we have to cut things, but it has to be sustainable, and we really do have to handle infrastructure. Of course, Case is going to go out and bring in another $50 million, and so then we'll be.
What do you want to cut, Kathleen?
He's pretty good at going out and getting that money. We have the right profile for a lot of federal and state funding opportunities, and we're maximizing, we're leveraging that now. We're front loading a lot of projects, meaning we've been in design phase, particularly on drainage projects. We're going into design phase on street projects. We continue to do those every year. CASE provides some unique expertise in that regard where we don't have to go out and spend third-party dollars for some of that. We are saving and leveraging what we can based on where we are today as a community. We're seeing a lot of financing because there's more than even a property tax increase could cover, even remotely cover. But the financing gives us the ability to fix those today and finance those over time. We're using that with our rate studies to justify revenue increases and rate increases for utility and for sanitation. And in taxes, we're trying to be manageable in how we project those increases with our budgeting, with other projects that we're at least moving parts around. And you've noticed when I said we've moved things around in CIP, that's normal. Capital improvement planning is very fluid because projects over time, things happen, projects stall, or new projects come about, emergencies come about that may impact some of that funding. That's why you plan for 5 years. Some cities plan for even longer. We want to stick to that 5-year window, get our feet a little bit settled in this CIP planning process. We have a new group of staff. We've got new environment now to manage, from legislation at the state level to how we are interacting with our partners, how we're engaging our franchisees. So you'll see more changes as we propose our next CIP. You'll see that again in FY28, all to try and minimize some of the negative financial impacts, minimize that on our taxpayers, minimize that on our ratepayers, but still get these projects done.
Can we give the audience and me a break for the bathroom?
Let me ask one more question. What do you want to cut?
That's not. I would like a bathroom break.
Yes, could we recess for 5
Thank you.
minutes?
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Then I'll take my question up when you get
For all
back.
of you, too.
I didn't need no break.
All right. Okay, I think we're about through with 7, aren't we? Okay. Kathleen, what do you want to cut? You mentioned about cutting. What do you want to cut? Hello? Okay, go to number 8 then. She's not going to answer the question.
Question 8, what infrastructure improvements are planned or recently completed in the Northwest Ward, and how does it compare to? I dropped. There we go. We're on. Question 8, what infrastructure improvements are planned or recently completed in the Northwest Ward, and how does it compare to other wards? General statement, when we plan projects, we have different methods of assessing critical needs. We do third-party analysis, like, what is it? Terracon. We'll have third parties come out and either assess pavement stability. We'll take complaints or issues as they come to us. Patricia and Lavera is a great example of a drainage project we weren't initially aware of, but we are now. Our own assessments, as our utility construction folks are out in the field, they see things. If there's lines that are susceptible to major breaks, we identify those as locations. And clearly there's locations all over the city, but we don't necessarily categorize them by award. So what we've done over the last 3 or 4 days, and I saw Case, counting on his fingers on some of these, did a great job of speed calculating these so that we could assess. If we wanted to answer this question, we really had to take all the projects within our list and previously completed and planned projects and assign those locations, which we can. We know where they are. So just overlaying that, those ward boundary areas to those projects. What you see on this slide, we presented within poster form at our CIP open house. We had the drainage graphic on the drainage poster and sort of that streets graphic, that historical graphic. There was a sort of a grid square overlay on top of that. We didn't actually have the ward overlays on that, but we used GIS and we added that overlay to these graphics to show you that we have some of these, many of these mapped out. We know these locations of other individual projects. Kind of splicing them all together can be just a mess of colors, but this should show you is, and I'll show some numbers on the next slide, it's all over the map. We have projects that are kind of scattered in all different areas. There are some projects, there's many projects that serve the entire city. So if it's our wastewater treatment plant, if it's our water plant, if it's a landfill, we consider those as servicing all of the districts. Now the categories that we've highlighted on this next slide, we kind of took ones that are very geo-specific, that are very localized projects. Your drainage infrastructure, your park, cemetery, historic sites, streets, water, wastewater, we can confine those to a very specific area. So we took those projects, in particular the multiple and the NA categories on the outside. Those are kind of fulfilling the list here. We're telling you there's a lot of projects that cover multiple areas. But these we've sort of localized to the different wards and just totaled all the projects up from past CIP lists. All inclusive, it didn't really raise any flags with us that any one particular area is more served. We do know a lot of our southwest and southeast have a little bit older and seems to be more neglected infrastructure. It's because of our north side has a lot of newer subdivisions, a lot of newer infrastructure.
And
So
let me throw something.
it is normal.
Throw something else out that's probably not in this discussion. We're not looking obviously at lane miles of, let's say, density of where population is in proximity to TxDOT facilities, such as Appleby Sand,
Sure.
such as North, versus local streets. So if we slice it a few different ways, and we can always do that, we can try to drill down and say, okay, are we spending more in southwest, southeast on streets? Likely, my guess is it's more of the local streets that are failing, that have issues, that aren't on the TxDOT system. And also some of the infrastructure in some of the neighborhoods. Let's just say the further you go up on the northeast side, I think you obviously have some newer neighborhoods when you get closer to the loop and then beyond the loop. So
Any questions?
Seems like a simple answer, but it's we're trying to convey that we use a lot of variables in our assessments to determine where we focus our energy and our resources on projects. So, and we try to be fair throughout the city to do that, but we do base it on critical need, whether a water pipe or whether a drainage facility is failing or is susceptible to fail, which could cause other issues. And particularly how many homes will it affect? What is the egregious impact? There are some that are very minor impact, so they fall a little bit lower on our priority list. You'll see that, and we've kind of broken out our CIP that you'll see in the next 2 or 3 weeks when we present this, that we've added a lot of very specific projects rather than just categorize it into general water line improvements or wastewater line improvements. We've broken those out to very specific lines that we know need to be fixed, and we're calling those out. So just a refinement of how we do things. So I hope this does answer a little bit of the questions. I know it's a quick response to a very kind of a complex question, but we did go line by line in every project and identified those locations.
Any questions?
I think there's a difference between what benefits all the wards and what benefits certain wards as opposed. So I think you didn't really answer my question in
Okay.
that. But that's for another time. It's cool.
Okay, we can, if there's any particular topic, I can list.
Well, I mean, there's a difference between a sewer line that affects everybody and then one ward getting a little more fun than the other one.
Well, let me say this, he did try to parse out, go back to the last, so where the asterisks are on the right, the 2 to the right, aren't
Yeah,
those,
multiple-
those are the ones that would be attributed to everything. Let's say it was a sewer plant related project or a main line that cut through multiple wards. Is that correct?
Sure, like our SCADA replacements, our AMR transmitters, the meter replacements that we've done, we're hitting every ward in those projects. If we looked at anything related to landfill, that's going to basically serve the entire city, even though it's in the Northwest Ward technically. It's not just serving the Northwest Ward. So we didn't want that to skew the numbers that we presented. We want to be very specific about whether it serves that particular ward and only that ward, or if it serves multiple areas.
We can, if it would help, we can, I don't know, Case, he's an Aggie, so he could sit and count this. I don't know if TRED can, with GIS, show what the total lane miles are of local streets within each of the wards, and then the approximate pavement age on the things that are getting priority, because you should have the pavement reports.
Yeah, age would be tough because we haven't analyzed every street section the same way at the same time. But maybe I'll ask the question of council, because we can do data a lot of different ways. What goal do we want to accomplish, or what does council want to see in terms of how we're segregating projects by ward?
You know, it's pretty simple here. It's Northwest 33, Northeast 33, Southwest 50, Southeast 60. Those are pretty simple numbers.
Well, he explained to you that it was because of the age. I mean, the
Right.
infrastructure in the Northwest and the Northeast.
I'm not
is
complaining, I'm just
newer
saying.
And the
that
density.
than the Southeast and the
And
Southwest.
the density.
the
There's
people
residential.
that I represent ask me questions.
Sure.
And they say, why is this happening here? Why are there 60 projects here and 33 here?
Mm-hmm.
They may not be able to say that, but they imply that. And I'm just asking so I can answer a question.
Oh,
So-
that's fair.
It's
so-
not an attack, it's just a question.
So here's what the likely answer is. In terms of because when I can say this, I know when Case is looking at projects, he's not looking at wards. When you're looking at existing conditions, areas where you're going to have failures, prioritization of the worst first, and then also with that, you also have to look at where your newer infrastructure is, and then that obviously it'll come its day that things will need to be replaced. Let's say, the neighborhood right behind Nacogdoches High School, as an example. Just use that versus
Kenbrook neighborhood.
exactly. I drive right past there all the time.
Okay, I got it wrong the first
But I also forget people's names unless they're like the three names we issue here, first names. So versus, let's say, some of the infrastructure down in Blaine's ward that you've got, obviously, we've heard on, it had been prioritized, some of the flooding items, things like that, and some of the old streets that have been there a long time and not had significant upgrades, and now have to, in some cases, probably completely rebuild the street or at least the subsurface drainage. So when you're talking about old, really old infrastructure versus not as old, that could be a differentiating factor alone. But I don't believe staff in any way, shape, or form, even though some of these projects obviously even preceded us, these are the ones that are completed or planned since '23.
Yeah.
But they're an iterative process, so we're working over time. I don't think it is any, and also you can look at the density of streets or lack thereof. When you look up in your ward, up on the northwest, you don't have a whole lot of grid up there relative to when you get deeper down in your own, even in your own district. You've got a lot more grid closer to SFA. So some of these things we can break them down a couple different ways that might be it might be easier to understand even for your constituents, why you might have a street that's getting replaced in the southeast or the southwest ward when you have another one that might not look great but hasn't hit what would really be critical failure.
Well, it's not pitting one set of people against another set that live in one ward or another. What it is, to a person, a pothole is a pothole. They don't care whether it's in, they're just saying, my street is full of potholes. I just want it fixed. So I'm just trying to answer their questions.
And a lot of these go beyond.
And they don't go into
But these go well beyond potholes. These are more significant. I don't think these are not your pothole patches hitting this.
Well,
Yeah, these are full repavings. Yeah.
For repavings, I mean, and this is in an effort to be objective, to be fair, to take the highest priority, the largest need, knock those out first, and address others as they come. We go through a process to do that. Again, I mentioned third-party analysis, but we even anecdotal. I mean, we take complaints and we respond to those complaints and make our own determinations based on those complaints. Patricia Olivera is a perfect example of that. It didn't fall in our assessment. We haven't done a citywide drainage study, comprehensive study up to this point. That and all the projects we've identified have been either in the field observations or complaint-driven observations that we then follow up on. With street rehab, it's been a little bit different. We use a third party. We do analyze those street conditions, penetrating into those street sections and determining what the stability level is. Can it last another 5 years? Can it last another 10 years? If it can't last more than 2 years, we're probably attacking that street first, letting those that have a longer lifespan live a little longer so we can budget accordingly. To answer your question, the other variables, topography is very different from the southeast to the northwest ward. Topography has a lot to do with whether or not a drainage facility is operating properly, whether it's perpetually an issue, whether we need to invest more resources. So topography is one. Population density, are there more neighborhoods in the southeast ward than the northwest ward, or the southwest ward than the northwest ward? Yes. So there's more streets, there's more people on those streets, they're being used at a higher frequency. So it's degrading faster. It's becoming more of an issue faster than some other areas. So there's more activity for us to repair those pieces, to repair those streets and that drainage infrastructure. So those are all factors too. And we can certainly look at a number of different variables to maybe prove that up, but ultimately we're assessing this on several levels. We're using those third parties, we're taking complaints, we're responding to issues that the public brings to us.
Well, I'm just trying to point out that the people in the Northwest Ward feel overlooked sometimes, underserved, and it doesn't matter to them whether you have a good excuse for it or not. They're asking me, like, what's the imbalance here? And, and for them, I'm using an example, but a broken street is a broken street.
So one thing we can do, and I'm trying to offer solutions maybe outside of what we presented and some of our scope and how we came to these numbers. One thing that was very productive that we did initially when we were first designing some of our massive drainage projects, so this would have been about a year and a half ago, we held a town hall. We invited everyone that would have been impacted, that was aware that we were conducting surveys in their area for drainage improvements, and we talked through those projects with them. We can do something similar, and if you're interested in your ward, where we engage some of the residents there that are concerned either about potholes or other infrastructure and say, well, what are we missing as staff, or what do you think in terms of your neighborhood or your area can the city put more attention to, or can the city maybe analyze and see, is this a problem that we can solve in the next year or 2 or 3? That's something we can do on a public engagement level that might give them a better understanding about how we do things. So there's not a perception that we're just ignoring them, or we're favoring one group over another group, because we don't want that perception.
Thanks.
Well, I'm seeing that same thing in my ward. If he can see it in his ward, I can sure see it in mine.
Sure.
So I feel the same way
Sure.
he does.
Well, and that makes sense. I mean, he should feel that way for his ward, just like I feel that way for my ward, you know?
And a lot of times we don't want there to be perceptions that maybe are exaggerated or not true, or we're not on the same page as how the residents feel about their neighborhoods and how we're addressing their issues.
Well, it's good our city ain't built on feelings, because we'd have a big issue, wouldn't we?
Would. So happy to engage at any level, and council members, certainly you're welcome to drive that. We're happy to participate.
Yeah, my feelings are just as important as anything else, you know?
Well, how people perceive the city is absolutely critical to the trust that we have, and that even when we present a project, or we present a budget, or we present anything, if there's trust there, it's easier on both sides to execute those things, so there's not constant doubt.
And I think for our part, it's my job to advocate in Brad's ward, in Blaine's ward, and Kathleen's ward to make sure that we take care of the needs. That's our job as a council, is to work together to make sure that we're meeting those needs. And if we're not prioritizing things correctly, then we need to know about it, right? We need to know that. But I don't think any one of us up here is advocating against the other. I don't think those numbers are evidence that any of us would do that.
And there are folks in the community that will never come talk to us. They won't call us, they won't email us.
They don't know you exist.
They'll talk to their council member. They'll reach out to their council member. We can always come to them, but that coordination is absolutely critical.
Okay, any other questions on that? Okay, I think number 9's been answered at the workshop last week, but if you want to go over it.
Real quick, I'll summarize. Again, this was a federal grant request, community project funding request. We did get awarded up to $1 million in reimbursement, federal dollars for, and specifically for Patricia Olvera drainage improvements. One of the caveats when you ask for outside money is there's typically outside strings attached to that. One of the things we have to make sure we do throughout the process from beginning to end is we engage that federal entity. In this case, it's Environmental Protection Agency. So they do have a representative that we've spoken to at least 2 or 3 times now. First step is building that work plan for them. They review it, they approve it. Then we start drafting the procurement documents. They review it, they approve it, and we move on. Every step in the process, there is review time. There is engagement with EPA staff. So if the question is, can we move faster? We'll move as quickly as we can, and we want to make sure we are not the fault of engaging that federal entity to make sure the project is moving forward. So there may be a little bit more steps than your typical drainage project where we just go out and get our engineers and go, but we will move fast on this. We want to make sure that those federal dollars are utilized. If we don't follow those steps, we lose that eligibility.
Very quickly on that, I know it's late and we're all trying to get out, but that's evidence of what I was talking about. Someone came to public comment and we're answering that question. And that's not in my ward, but I asked the question because I want to know what it takes to get that problem solved.
And that's yet another attempt for us, things that we make available at every public meeting, that open forum, that's exactly why we address those.
And keep in mind, this has been a priority since going back to 24, when we first submitted that project, or we're preparing it for Congressman Sessions' office. So it was definitely on the radar. So, and then the Doge and all that, it pushed it. So it was and is a priority. And I think you've also asked the question, could we move it faster? I guess that's the age-old Aggie question, and that's probably a yes, at least in terms of working on the design. But we do have to follow their process, or it won't pass muster.
This is where we become that nagging customer that says, EPA, have you reviewed this? Hey, what's the status on this document? What's the status on that document? We're engaging them. We're at least doing everything we can. We don't want to let things set when it comes to these things. We want to push those federal entities to respond accordingly.
I can tell you this, if having worked in a different part of my life on federally funded transit projects, if you don't follow that to the T on the grant process with all the various approvals as you move along, then anything you didn't follow is precluded from reimbursement. So, including your procurement of design services.
Okay.
Does this bring up 10?
Yep.
I don't know how we're going to finish because they wanted me to answer a couple of these. I'll be fairly brief though. Which are the most important city functions? Are we spending accordingly? If we don't have enough city tax dollars, what are we going to cut? What income can we raise? Now, I think, do you have it? Oh, you didn't give me the mini Glock or whatever this is to click here. Okay, sorry. So, what I'm going to do for this is go back to really last year's budget to a degree, and then what we talked about in the retreat, because the retreat was really the snapshot on what we believe, and we're wanting y'all's concurrence on in terms of what the priorities should be, in terms of staffing, capital projects, and general approach. But retention, benefits, and morale, I don't have that prior slide that we've shown several times, that we've went from about 25% down to 16% over roughly what would be a 4-year period if you're going back to the year prior to several of us being here, Todd and myself, and continued recruitment on PD side and first responders. Obviously, we've now built in the 3 new officers, but one thing with this kind of I know we don't have unionized shops, thank the Lord. However, these step plans, I do believe we should try to treat them very similar to kind of like a contract, even though it isn't. I think I would at least try to build that in every year unless we hit some critical, terrible issue. And that doesn't mean at the cost of all the civilian staff that they not get raises either. But the time in service, time in rank, I do think when folks join an agency, there's the expectation that that's going to be, that as long as they are time and rank and they move up the step, that those raises are going to be there at the requisite times. That's kind of our promise to them for what they do all of the time, even though all the time they wonder what I do. I had to work that in too. But that is part of recruitment and retention, and that's the bulk of our staff. So that is a priority, and it's been everywhere else that I've worked. And with that is also our critical infrastructure and utilities, and making sure we implement those projects, that we focus on those, because that's all part of the life, safety, health, and welfare. And I'd also include transportation in that on our major corridors, and that going down to the 4th bullet. Coordinating with TxDOT and SFA on that growth, including what's going to happen on North, what's going to happen with 5969. The lifeblood of the town is primary jobs and commerce. And with our downtown plan, we do think the continued presence and expansion of primary jobs is going to be not only through SFA, but with Elliott, with Eaton, and some of the other partners, will also help us with the final bullet, leveraging and utilizing city assets. I've talked about some of the other studies that we're undertaking. At the end of the day, get all the buildings up to snuff on North, get the traffic patterns and the cross-section appropriately designed so we don't have unnecessary accidents in proximity to the university. All our ingress, egress points as the university grows. Clean up downtown, highest and best use of our buildings, and maybe build in some other attractions that also still allow the historic character without really changing the character of downtown. On the next one, priorities and challenges. Obviously, nothing's getting cheaper. It was accelerated not that many years ago in COVID. We've got global conflicts, supply chain impacts, nation states that are sometimes peers, sometimes aggressors that factor into that supply chain. We've already taken some steps on, and some of the next steps are about to be brought back to y'all on downtown, including the Festival Park and the hotel analysis. The housing gap analysis, we are going to also recommend that potentially for the Type B, but also possibly have NEDCO partner in that. Mary Frances and I talked about having them put some of their money towards that as well. Since you have so many realtors and brokers around that table, and bankers, you would think that they'd take an interest in helping fund that too. And then we have GLO funds coming for the comprehensive plan, so we can move that forward. And now that we have the SFA plan in hand, that's complete, that gives us a go-by kind of on a projection that will help us it will greatly help us in terms of projecting forward. Now, concerns and challenges, the spend rate, inflation, healthcare. We talked about the firefighter apparatus. Now, I could have even added a few other things, like we don't have a drainage impact fee. We're lacking some of those other things. Most of the cities that have those, they typically tag that on, obviously, to new development as part of their planning process and permitting process. We really haven't done, Mike's alluded to it, we haven't done a citywide drainage study and talk about more regional type detention type projects. I think those are some of the things we could start talking about, but there would be a cost with that, and how you would maybe even develop a different, a planning tool basically with your permit process that would have impact fees. And as y'all probably know, or you may not know, the state has made it much more difficult now to adopt impact fees, and some are getting rolled back in some places. If you had them in place, it was easier. It would be much more difficult. Typically, impact fees are usually lower at a city core. You get out to the new development on the suburban development, usually around whatever your radial loop is, and it's usually more expensive because your drainage is going to cost more to transmit that water, your potable water, your sewage, your roads, everything's going to be new, so it typically has a higher fee to it. In this next session, we are concerned about the state's focus on property tax. We'll say that it does appear, we're nonpartisan, but both of the primary parties have identified that, and so at the state level, in one way or the other, in terms of property tax, some to one extent more than the other, but I think one of them also has identified, okay, keep the property tax flat, but also provide more services. So some of these things at the local level just don't add up. So we've got to make sure that our delegation understands that if you do take certain things away, what is going to replace that revenue? And then we've talked about the airport business plan as kind of how we spend next. And then going back really to the question, if we don't have enough city tax dollars, what are we going to cut? We're projecting out to 2030, looking at that spend rate. We're not looking at what we're going to cut right now, because we have a lot of projects going on, a lot more than we're going on historically. We've got retention where it needs to be. I think we've got morale, my one-liners notwithstanding, in a pretty good place. I do think we are going to have the discussion with our delegation about what other incomes we can bring to bear, revenue streams. And we also, just with our existing partnerships, we are going to have to be a little bit more disciplined and not let us be on the bad end of every deal. And so we've got a few others that we may bring to y'all to revisit, and it may not be a whole lot of money here and there, but cumulatively, and it may not all just be in one category. But when, you know, I can just say, even in the last several weeks, we've had asks for, oh, hey, can you extend a water line outside the city, outside your CCN? No. You know, we're contributing hot tax for some things in terms of what is that ROI directly to the city. We've got other areas that we can still drill down into. Talked about the dispatch contract. Now, our intention is certainly not to harm our other partners, but there are some pennies in the cushions that we're still discovering. Some of these agreements are, you know, decade plus old, and we can do better. So that's what we're trying to do. In terms of what are we going to cut? Now, personnel, it's our biggest cost, obviously. And then you're asking me to choose amongst my children almost. Like, I wouldn't do that. So but we're a full service city. I think the best way to look at it is our first responders are our biggest bulk piece. But if we don't maintain the quality of life, if we don't mow parks and right-of-ways, if we don't clean up downtown and go to highest and best use, move more things here for commerce, it'll be a slippery slope that no amount of first responders added will make the quality of life better. It is a team effort. I think anybody in PD would say their relationship with planning, with code enforcement, and all the other shops, that we all work together to make this a better community. And I don't know how else to articulate it, but they also don't want to live in a place where, hey, it's just a first response community because you have to, because you don't really have a great place to live. And that's why we strive to have a full service city. And let me see. I hope that that probably did or didn't answer y'all's questions on that.
Any questions for Rick? We'll go to the next one then, Rick.
Okay, knowing that each remaining bond issuance has a tax rate impact, do any future GO bonds need to be reconsidered? So if we have had this internal discussion, and I know we've issued the 2 tranches. If you look at what's sitting out there, now obviously we're going after probably a series of sidewalk projects on North Street, but that planning process and then those grant processes probably would not come from that Prop G at the bottom under the balance there that's yet to be issued. And I'm going to kind of work my way up because I'm going to get to airport last. Then you have streets. I know we've talked about streets and that many more local streets we still need to address. That's part of that tranche as well. Cemetery, let's see, I think that is a maintenance facility, correct?
It's renovating the office and building a maintenance.
Yeah. So, and then we've talked about storm drainage. It's almost like you can never have enough of it. And then we get to the airport. And now, when we've looked at some of the over-under numbers in each of the silos, I know it's shown on your monthlies that the airport is, you know, on paper, it's in a grand scheme of things, it's really not that heavily subsidized because it's not a huge amount. However, on paper, it appears to be more upside down because technically it's supposed to be an enterprise fund, so it's supposed to break even. However, we are in the process of several capital improvements out there. We have potential partnerships with Elliott and Bright and others that may match those. What my recommendation would be, before we issue the final tranche, knowing that would be about, is it 4 to 5 cents? Is that right? So call it 4.5 cents. Knowing that, yes, if the conflict in the Middle East goes all the way into the December or November, yes, gas is not going to get cheaper. everything in the supply chain is going to get more expensive. I think we go through the process of the airport business plan, and we can try to really deduce, is it the full amount? Are there anything else? Could it be storm drainage or even a portion of the streets? Maybe not the streets, I'd say maybe the sidewalks. What else could we go after grant funds? Could we potentially shave that number down to maybe half of the issuance to just be cognizant of the total tax rate? Now, the only way we could do that, we'd have to take those items back to the voters. But I would want to study all of those areas more, and also see if we had other opportunities. And let's just take storm drainage. I mean, Case is submitting $21 million, and so now granted, they're already planning on spending it regardless, because we have such needs, because we have such old infrastructure. So some of these things will kind of vet themselves out. Could there be a couple million in here? Maybe. Would we be foregoing maybe matching other grant funds from other sources? Possibly. Again, what would really help us is that the state reconsider some of these other measures, like raising some of the exemptions even further. That's probably our biggest worry if something like that happens. And then also the tax cap, or before this tranche is issued, and I don't think we've worked through this piece. I think there were some of the proposals that if we hadn't issued them, would it be grandfathered or not? I think there were some things in the last session that we might even have to revisit, depending on what was approved. I don't know it'll happen in this session, but they were even looking at your total bond debt to your population ratio and all of those things. It may be that this is your last time that you could ever issue these bonds and that debt, and then maybe that's it. And so we can bring you more detail on that balance in terms of prioritization. And do we have any other potential source we could fund them out of?
Can I ask you a question? You mentioned sidewalks on North Street. Didn't we spend the last 3 years doing sidewalks on North and on each side of North Street? What are we talking about?
We did, and TxDOT
No, wait,
did.
TxDOT did.
But what we're talking about is the TxDOT plan for North Street. What we'll be looking at is the entire envelope of from right-of-way line to right-of-way line. Because as, I don't know if you even saw my most recent correspondence with the district engineer, we have an imperfect situation with that footprint. So they'll be, we'll be looking back of curb, we'll be looking between the curbs, the lane configurations, turn movement potential. Could you do some reconfiguration? Could it be a raised median? Could you have some different options in there that no one's ever thought of? And they would hold public meetings and work with us on that. So would there be potential to maybe get some more space between the sidewalk and the curb, or a little bit wider sidewalk? I think everything in that envelope would be open to, and stay with me. I know I don't seem like the most urban guy, but I've worked on several projects in highly dense areas, and as the campus population increases, the amount of pedestrian traffic increases, and potentially some of the massing of their buildings get closer to the street. Some of the options, just in terms of sight lines, in terms of the ability of getting somebody to be able to walk across the street safely, the speeds, all of those things. They will look at all of the above in that corridor plan.
So is this the city paying for this, or is this all TxDOT?
This is all TxDOT paying for this.
And no money from the city?
No, we don't even have to cover the match. That's what that MOU was. Yeah, this is the phase one. This is the planning phase. And then the subsequent phases, we would work with TxDOT to pursue whatever between the locally preferred options are and the TxDOT recommended options are. We would work in subsequent calls for projects to go after federal and state funds to actually fund the improvements.
Thanks.
Any other questions on that one? Last one, are there ways Oh, never mind.
You know, we try to go through the process across the year, kind of a linear process, even starting in the fall. I know everybody's an expert, and I'm talking about just someone may say, okay, I wish they'd do things this way or that way. I think we've got a great team here. I think we have moved the city substantially forward in ways that, for whatever reason, either hadn't been focused on, or it wasn't the right time or the right place or the right people and the right partners. We've also had some good luck. I mean, let's face it, we've had some good luck, and I mean, we've got a letter of intent with Elliott on the garage. We've had some success on grant funds in some areas, and other areas not, because probably other priorities like wars and things like that are likely going to eat up some of the federal budget. I guess part of the answer of this question is there anything that we're prioritizing that hasn't been y'all's priorities, and as we move forward? And that's why we've gone through those fall workshops and trying to synthesize that into what may not always be unanimous, but what we think are, what should be at least, the priorities for the community, and y'all as the representatives of them. So I don't know if that, if I had a crystal ball, or if we were perfect, or God knows I'm not perfect, could we always do better? Maybe, probably, everybody can. But I think we're doing pretty good, relatively speaking, with the challenges that are on the table.
Okay, anybody got any questions on that? Okay, I'm gonna make one closing statement, and according to our charter, we are a home rule form of government. We had this question and answer on the budget tonight, and I know a lot of this pertained to the budget. Some of it, as far as I'm concerned, didn't. But we have a finance department that's really good, and we have directors in this city that are exceptional in what they do. And if this wasn't a testament tonight, there was not one thing that was said tonight that I haven't heard in these meetings or workshops before. Not one thing. So this is the testament to what you have working in this city to do the best that they can with what dollars that they have to work with. And I appreciate it very much. That being said, this meeting is adjourned. God bless the great city of Nacogdoches, Texas.